What's going on, everyone? The Winged Eagle podcast is back. Look at there. After a 2-week absence due to a couple of WWE pay-per-views, we are back in business here this Saturday, back at our original time of 3 p.m. Pacific. And I wish the return of this podcast could come under better circumstances, because I think you all know what this podcast is going to be most focused on. And that, of course, is the flat-out bonkers amount of events that have been going on in the past 24 to 48 hours. All of the allegations, the speaking out movement, just the numerous accusations and very serious charges on a lot of people, a lot of big names in the business, that is just going to have an intense and insane ripple effect through a lot of promotions. It's already happening, already some terminations, suspensions, resignings, all sorts of stuff going on, and we're going to talk about it. But we're going to also tread carefully. We're going to limit what we discuss in terms of what's been reported so far, and we're going to keep it very, very limited to maybe some names, maybe some potential ramifications for this, accountability, but in terms of detailing the specifics of each of these stories, it feels very, very gross to go through and read any of this out loud as a man on YouTube. And since this information is all extremely accessible with the speaking out movement, simple search of the hashtag on Twitter will give you everything you need there. And when it comes to these victims and their stories and all of them speaking out and the experiences that they're sharing, I invite and encourage all of you to go read those for yourself, make your own judgments, and listen to these stories. And when it comes to these stories, the only thing I ask is for truthfulness and honesty and just to be completely unmerciful if any of this stuff is true. So shout out to all the victims here that have been, now finding the courage collectively as a group to come out and share their stories kind of one by one over the past couple of days. And a lot of these stories have been kept closeted due to fear of what that would do to a lot of these careers and stuff. So we're going to get into how it started. We're going to get into a lot of the big names that have been accused and maybe what some of it means and how we're going to move forward from this. But clearly, this is an extremely dark time in wrestling, as if 2020 couldn't get any worse. It's just been a rotten year all around in society, and especially in pro wrestling, and especially in society, I should say, and just in the world in general with what we've been dealing with, especially in the past few months with all the COVID-19 stuff, followed by, the brutal murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the Black Lives Matter movement, and the protests on police brutality, and all that stuff going on. Then we're jumping into this, which is already just a couple of years, removed from the initial Me Too movement that got a lot of this stuff started, and a lot of the enough is enough type of crap with the sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, and rape that's been going on throughout the world for so long. So wrestling got hit hard. The wrestling got hit really hard, and it's just a dark day. This is not good in any way, shape, or form. As somebody who makes a portion of my living talking about wrestling, this isn't good for me. I don't want to have to talk about this, and having to even repeat some of this stuff makes me a little bit nauseous, to be honest with you. And it's just not a good look. It just sucks. I think we're going to look back on not only this year, but this specific time period here as maybe a turning point and a time in the world where things really did start to change. Was, back here in 2020 in terms of a lot of different subjects and issues and hot button topics and stuff. So with this all being revealed, like I said, it's been a very dark and revealing day, a couple of days in wrestling, and it's gnarly. But like I said, we're going to get into all of that here to open up the podcast, and then we do have wrestling to talk about. We're going to get into results as well. We're going to talk about this past Wednesday Night Wars, NXT, and AEW. Oh, gosh. Okay, so I've left my cat, or my window open in my bedroom for my cat, and I think I can hear protesters screaming very loudly. I hope that does not distract me. But anyway, like I was saying, we have wrestling results to get into, too. We'll talk about AEW, NXT. We'll talk about last night's Smackdown. And now there are horns honking. Yikes. I might have to get up and close my window in a minute. As a matter of fact, I am. Guys, I am so sorry. I've got the window open, and I've got a loud protest right outside my door. Please hang tight. Wow. Talk about live podcasting. I mean, that's really topical. Hey, there's a whole slew of Black Lives Matter protesters going right by my apartment right now. I've got all my windows closed, so hopefully they will not disturb us too much, but I'm glad the protests are still going on. I'm very much behind this movement, and provided the protests are peaceful and there's no violence and damage, I'm all for making your voice heard. So best of luck to them. I just wish they were not interrupting my podcast. But anyway, like I said, in addition to all the gnarly stuff we're going to talk about, we got wrestling results to get into, and by the time we close this podcast, hopefully we will be ending things on a positive note as we talk about wrestling and some of the more entertaining things that we saw this week. Oh my God, what a nightmare out here. Literally, the minute I start this podcast, this happens. Hopefully this is just they're passing through and it won't be too bad. Oh yeah, everything's fine. There's no danger over here. I'm way up on the third floor. It's just, it's loud, and I'm trying to speak to you guys, and I can't because we got a protest going on. That's right. We're live, pal. But anyway, I want to do my normal pleasantries. I want to say hi to all you guys. I want to answer the super chats that are here already. Shout out the patrons. And then we will start going into the news about the Speaking Out movement. And prior to that happening this week, there was also a gigantic story and some really ugly details regarding WWE's handling of the COVID-19 crisis and just the absolute shit show that it was behind the scenes with all of that. And that was really going to be the top story that I was going to open with today until all the Speaking Out stuff happened. So, like I said, we had a lot to digest and a lot to get into in this episode, but luckily I've got a full 2 hours to talk to you guys. I don't have to be at work. I can push this thing to 2.5 hours if I have to, so we should have plenty of time to get all this done before I got to hop out of here and head off to my other job that gets my bills paid. So anyway, first of all, hello to those of you that are in here in the chat. If you guys do me a couple of favors right off the bat, smash that thumbs up button for me. And if you're here and you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. We're literally like 5 subscribers away from 30,000. So we'll probably hit that today. And it's a milestone that's very cool, but at the same time, not one that I'm like overly proud of. I've always said for months and years that we should have 100,000 more subscribers than we do. So even though 30,000 is cool, I think it should be 130,000. But thank you to everybody that's been a supporter over the years. You guys are great, and we'll see how long this ride continues to roll. But subscribe, thumbs up, click that bell, all that good stuff, and I'd appreciate it. Big J and Sports Fanatic and Madeline Feebush and Ben and William and Prince, Midwest Goon, Patty, Zane, Vontae Page, good to see you, and Colin Wright, John, No Holds Barred, Sam, Dre, what's up, man? I was going to mention you later on. You are my next live stream in line. Now that we got done with the Money in the Bank 2011, you're coming up next. Barry MK400, good to see you in here, and I've got a mod as well. Thanks for the super chat. Nice pick of Monster next to Bailey and Sasha. Oh, thanks. I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, it does look like him. I saw on Twitter today he got a haircut, so shout out to him. I'll tell you what, I cannot imagine having hair grow in the middle of this pandemic, so for once in my life, it pays to be bald. I didn't have to even deal with any of that stuff. Spaz, what's up, dude? Thanks for the $2. Riddle got accused by his stalker. F that. Well, yeah, we're gonna get into a lot of the people that were involved, and the one thing you will notice when you go read these stories for yourself is that, you know, some of the evidence seems stronger than others, you know, so there's a lot to kind of digest. That's why it's not going to be useful or helpful or constructive at all to go through any specific actual details here in this podcast, aside from maybe a couple, because that's just all stuff that will come out in time, and you know, we'll see. But there's just so many at once here. I mean, it was just like the flurry of names, you know, that were coming in. But based on what we saw on Smackdown last night, you know, and with WWE keeping the Riddle stuff in, I think that was taped, you know, on Wednesday or whenever that was. They had briefly removed Riddle's Smackdown debut from WWE.com, but they included him last night on Smackdown. Big victory for him. He seems to be there. So whatever WWE knows of the situation, they must feel that it's going to turn out to be not that bad kind of thing. So otherwise, I think they would have cut that from the show because it was taped, and they could have just edited it out, and they didn't. So we'll talk a lot about it. Thanks for 5 more popping in from you, Spaz. Could WWE book 3 different rivalries for 3 faces of Wyatt, Fiend, Demon, Wyatt, Bryan, Funhouse versus whoever? They could. I thought it would maybe be all 3 personalities versus one guy like Strowman, and maybe it gives the Fiend a little bit of a break. I think the Fiend character is really good for a live audience, so they can kind of bring back old school Bray in the meantime to fill in the gaps, and now he's kind of got the 3 faces of Foley thing going on. And if all 3 characters have 3 different feuds with 3 separate guys, that would actually be pretty cool. I'd be all into that. But we'll be talking about Bray Wyatt later on, way later on, as we get to the end of this. As usual, something I haven't done in a couple of weeks because I have not been up here for the podcast is just shout out these patrons real quick, and then we'll get in to the meat and potatoes because I think the protesters have now passed through. I can kind of faintly hear them, but they're not up our ass anymore, which is good. Big shout out to all of my supporters on Patreon: Alex Reynolds, Alan Carter, Barry MK400, Big Mike's Wrestling Recap, Blake Moran, Brandon Yelverton, Claudio Clavadexter, Domanian Elwell Sr., Daniel Rodriguez, Devlin Husband, you'll probably be in here as well. Dre Leggett, good to see you also. You got the next live stream coming up on some territory days. Jimmy Anderson, J. Carg Music, John Riffle, John Rediford, Josiah Blevins, K-Dogs Kennel, Keith Salyers, Michael Cuomo, Michael Tong, Mr. Steve, Nathan Walker, Naveed is back. Good to see you, my friend. Nick Musser, Reese Jones, Ryan Y, Scott Moss, Scotty Cura, Steve Myers, and the Double Z TV. And there was a new one that I did have coming in today. Where'd you go? I know your name is Bane, but you have pledged to have a video done as well. And you got an interesting one that's going to be coming up in July. It's going to be basically a comparison between 2 major wrestlers. We haven't decided on which 2 yet, but we're going to break down their careers into 7 different categories and rate them and find out who we think is the better one. And there's all sorts of great duos possible, and me and the gentleman Bane are going to discuss that, and that will be coming up in July. So there you go. I got nothing else to tell you scheduling-wise other than, of course, I'll be up here this coming Monday night after Raw, as usual, for our Monday Night Raw review. And then on Monday, maybe I'll have some more information on when my next video will be. because I'm working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes. We got some new intros, some new cosmetic stuff being worked on right now. T-shirts are coming. So I'm doing a lot of that stuff behind the scenes right now and haven't been really focused on any other videos other than the Money in the Bank 2011 and Summer of Punk review that we did on Thursday. So if you guys want to check that out, that's on the channel as well. That was that was actually a PayPal sponsored video from Joey G. And that was a lot of fun to relive, to see that whole pipe bomb situation and watch that again and everything that unfolded between Cena and Punk and Triple H and Kevin Nash and Alberto Del Rio and the whole deal. And Vince McMahon was a lot of fun to relive. So if you want to check out my feelings on a very exciting summer 9 years ago, check it out. It's available on the channel now. All right, big gulp here before we get ready to dive into this. So like I said at the beginning of the show here, we are going to be focused very much so on the Speaking Out movement and everything that has happened in the past couple of days. And like I said earlier, my job is to not report the news. I'm not here to confirm anything or deny anything or say what's true. I don't have sources. I was kind of laughing at Twitter the other day. If you're not a real journalist, I don't think you should be reporting anything to your subscribers. We can all read, I hope, and we can all click the same shit you can click. And, when it comes to sensitive material that's this sensitive, I think you should leave that in the hands of the journalists. And when it comes to a YouTube channel like mine or a podcast, my job is to discuss it, not to report it. So I'm only going to discuss kind of what's been reported so far. It's not my job to determine anyone's innocence or guilt or anything like that. We're just here to discuss this and talk about the potential ramifications of it individually for a lot of these guys. So for those of you who have been living under a gigantic boulder, a couple days ago, a bunch of allegations came out over British wrestling star David Starr. And all of this kind of kicked off in the British wrestling scene. I mean, it started with him and it completely tore through the entire British wrestling scene with some major names that you would all recognize being outed as being sleazebags somewhere in the past, being accused of various things, sexual advances, using their power to get somebody to perform a sexual favor, contact with underage people, 15, 16, 17-year-old girls who are aspiring wrestlers being taken advantage of. All sorts of different stories like this were coming out literally one after another, many of which with evidence to back it up, most of which in the form of DMs or text messages. And that's a lot of the more damning stuff, because I think that when it comes to that, can those things be photoshopped? Sure. But when it comes down to allegations that strong, the court can subpoena your phone records. You can find out. Nothing is ever truly deleted. So if these text messages really, really did take place and these crimes made it all the way, to legal proceedings, they can find out the truth or not. So it really doesn't make any sense to me to Photoshop someone's bullshit and create a fake DM when that can be easily disproven down the line. So a lot of times when you see these text messages and you see these DMs from these names, the Justin Roberts and the Velveteen Dreams and so on and so forth, I know it's innocent until proven guilty, but that's pretty goddamn strong evidence if you ask me. And I think a lot of that too, it's kind of a double-edged sword thing, because you're going to have so many stories coming out. Is it possible that somebody could use this situation to damage somebody else and to slander them? Sure, I suppose. Maybe there's a jaded female wrestler or male wrestler that said, you know what, since all these stories are coming out and everybody's being believed, maybe I can use this opportunity to fuck this person out of their career. I'm sure douchebags like that might exist, but for the most part, you have to read these stories of the victims and take them, for the most part at face value, and allow the other party to deny these claims or whatever, which is a lot of what we're seeing. I had nothing to do with it. I didn't do it, and blah, blah, blah. And that's when you have to, when you're reading these stories, I just really, really encourage you to use your own judgment. Use your own judgment. Sometimes you can read a situation and know in your heart of hearts, what likely happened. You're not the judge and jury, but you can kind of make your own determinations there. And if you can put away your feelings for a particular individual, because there's some names on that were outed here that I like a lot and I'm disappointed and sad to hear this about. but that's not going to cloud my judgment as to whether or not I believe they're guilty or innocent or anything like that. So, if you can remain unbiased about it, read these stories and you just judge for yourself. Does that sound plausible or not? Is that a bit of a stretch? Does it sound exactly like a lot of stories that we've heard for years and years and years? And I've joked for a long time, that wrestlers are kind of perverted freaks. We've seen that a lot. And I mean, hell, I see that enough on Twitter with some of the people I follow that are constantly drooling over, these internet models and messaging them and, oh, you're so beautiful and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you guys, you ain't going to be in a girl on Twitter. Doesn't work that way. But I understand that wrestling is just full of perversion and desperation and just a lot of grossness from the men and potentially the women too. This is not really necessarily about women speaking out against men. It's about people in general speaking out against abuse. And there's been plenty of male wrestlers that have had a story or two to tell throughout this whole thing as well. So, like I said, just read through it, read through the stories. I think it's incredibly courageous for them to share some of this stuff that they may have been kept bottled up for so long. And then now we're outing this. If I'm trying to I can't imagine it, but if I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, that has to be pretty nerve-wracking. It's probably going to cause you to lose a hell of a lot of sleep and cause you great emotional distress just to even get this stuff out. So, a lot of people are going through a lot of anxiety right now over this as well, the victims and, everybody involved in it. So this all kicked off, like we said, in the British wrestling scene with all these names being outed, story after story after story, to the point where now it even looks like police and law enforcement could be getting involved in here, with the West Yorkshire police being encouraged to investigate some of these stories. And we'll see, as the time goes by here, because I think this is going to be a continuously developing situation. And in terms of the British wrestling scene, if they're going to start having investigations into some of these claims and what they wind up turning up, it could go a lot further than just being stripped of a title or being suspended or being terminated by whatever, various promotion. A lot of promotions, TNT Wrestling, Progress Wrestling, a lot of other promotions over there have taken action, severing ties, stripping titles, suspending guys, doing whatever they have to do while the investigations continue. And I think it was Progress Wrestling, and we even saw this a little bit of this with AEW, which we'll talk about in a minute. They've taken action, but have also said that they're going to reevaluate the situation and see where everything is in a couple of months, I guess, regarding, what the evidence turns up and what other information is found in investigations. And if these people can be rehabilitated, which I think is bullshit, that, being a sexual predator is not a fucking disease. You cannot use, I don't think you should be able to use, mental incapacity as a defense, for you just being a drunk, horny, desperate, sickening pervert. You can't claim that, I got a mental problem. It's like those sex addicts. Tiger Woods isn't a sex addict. He had so much damn money, he could fuck anybody he wants, so that it's just, come on, it's such a silly, I need help, I need to go to rehab and therapy. Go to therapy to be told not to fucking take advantage of a unconscious woman? You need more in therapy. So I don't really agree with a lot of that stuff, but it's these companies' decisions to do what they want to do and reprimand or punish whoever they need to punish, and they in whatever way they see fit. But this idea that you can be cured of some disease to not be a douche is really fucked up sounding in my mind. But anyway, that's beside the point. So once all the stuff in the British wrestling scene started coming out, that was bad enough. We already thought, holy crap, this is a dark day. This is going to be a huge blow to wrestling, like a huge blow. And then it spilled over everywhere, including here in the States, with some big names across AEW and WWE being accused of various things. Now, we'll talk about some of the bigger names because I think we have a little bit of information on those. And I'd say probably the biggest name that was talked about yesterday was Matt Riddle. And Matt Riddle was accused by, I didn't get her name. No, that wasn't Liz. Liz was with Dave Lagana. There's so many different names here. This female performer had made some allegations against Matt Riddle, and he denied it right off the bat, even released a statement through his lawyer, which read, "The allegations by this independent female performer are completely false and another attempt to harass and humiliate Mr. and Mrs. Riddle to try and tarnish their reputation in the community. We've been aware for the past 2 years of this performer stalking the Riddle family. In 2019, our firm had a draft pleading against this performer to seek an injunction for cyber stalking in the circuit court for the circuit court of Orange County, Florida. So this person has already kind of been after Matt Riddle, and they had something happen there. And this is one of those stories where, what do you have here? Do you have Matt Riddle being a scumbag, or do you have this person trying to take advantage of the speaking out movement and use this as a way in their already ongoing vendetta against Matt Riddle and apparently his wife? We don't know. You can't just automatically go into the chat here and say this is the way it is. You don't fucking know. You don't know. And neither do I. But when you look at this particular situation and the fact that WWE was aware of it, they released 2 identical statements, by the way, yesterday as well, because Jordan Devlin was another one of the stars that was accused of a few things. And so the statement came out twice, which read, individuals, of course, it reads just like all their stupid-ass statements do. Individuals are responsible for their own personal actions. WWE has zero tolerance for matters involving domestic violence, child abuse, and sexual assault. Upon arrest for such misconduct, a WWE talent will be immediately suspended. Upon conviction for such misconduct, a WWE talent will be immediately terminated. WWE's ability to find, suspend, or terminate a talent will not be, however, limited to or compromised in any manner to the incontrovertible evidence of such illegal misconduct is presented to WWE. So basically, I jumbled up that last line there, but they're saying in this that everybody's responsible for their own actions and they will be punished as the details come out. If you're charged, suspended, if you're convicted, termination, blah, blah, blah. So it's a little bit more detailed than a lot of their statements have been, but it all goes back to that, oh, they're responsible for their own actions. That's the only thing they know how to say. Because they know this is crazy too. This sucks for them. Jesus, if they're not already depleted enough with everything going on. You guys got guys like Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens and others that are sitting at home, sitting out this pandemic. You got no freaking audience in the stands right now. You're releasing top creative guys. The company's a mess. Ratings are down. Shit's just all over the place right now. And now this has to happen to the company. So they're releasing their blanket statement that they always do here. But in the case of Matt Riddle, I think WWE during the day while they were maybe monitoring the situation or whatever, they removed his debut, all mentions of his debut from their social media and from WWE.com. And the show was already taped. But then we saw Smackdown last night. He did appear, had the segment with AJ and beat AJ. So I don't know this full story here, but if I had to guess, that means WWE took a look at the situation, got all the facts and got all the information that they could, and determined that nothing that's not recoverable happened here. So maybe they just think whatever went down was okay, and it's not going to turn out to be any damaging for Matt Riddle from a legal standpoint because he's got his lawyer and all of that. He seems to be happily married. At least I thought he was. He even tweeted a picture of his wife last night. I guess just letting everybody know, hey, I'm just not a fucking scumbag or whatever. So pick your side in that. Read the story. I've read it. Make your own determination. It's not my job to speculate as to what I think. I'll just let you guys think for yourself. But when it comes to stuff like that, it's a little bit more grayish than just like, oh yeah, 1,000,000% that guy was a scumbag. Maybe there's a little bit more to some of these stories. We've seen other accusations that haven't been really that valid in the long run, most notably Enzo, who, I have no doubt is probably gross and is probably hooked up with a lot of young chicks because he's Enzo, and it's probably really easy for him to wander into any trailer park in Deer Shit, Missouri and pick up some woman out of the trailer parks because that's what he does. But he's not a rapist, none of that's our business. He can do whatever he wants. Male or female. If you want to be promiscuous, do it. Provided it's consensual, you have that right. You're an adult. So maybe this is one of those situations. There's definitely going to be some of those there, but there's others that, there's very little to debate. When you look at the evidence, when you read the story and you read maybe some of the evidence that was provided, voicemails, text messages, things like that, for the people that blatantly shout out innocent until proven guilty, I'm like, well, there you fucking go. So it just kind of depends on the situation. Like I said, the other big WWE named star was Jordan Devlin. He hasn't even been on TV lately because he can't get back over here. That's why they had the Cruiserweight title tournament, took the belt off of him. So at least there's no title on around this guy's waist, but his allegations were also strongly denied, and that's when WWE released the same exact statement regarding him. Now, the other big WWE name had actual action taken against him, and that was Jack Gallagher. WWE has released Jack Gallagher officially as of yesterday. He was another name that had a very specific story written about him with very specific details about him. And, you know, some of those are the stories that I'm talking about when you read them, and they're so specifically detailed. I'm not saying they're not lying, but in your heart of hearts, do you really think they are, kind of thing? So, like I said, read for yourself, use your own judgment. Jack Gallagher, gone. And most recently, Velveteen Dream's name has come back up. Now, I didn't know what happened with the first allegations. I almost felt a little bit bad about even talking about them to begin with because it didn't affect anything on TV. He wasn't held off of TV. He was still given title matches to the extent that I even predicted him to win it In Your House, predicted him incorrectly, but basically thought it had all, whatever was going on there, had blown over, even though it was clearly his private picture, and the voicemail that was released was clearly his voice. So I was surprised that he got past that. But now there's more allegations coming out, this time from a independent wrestler named Josh Fuller, which, again, you can check this stuff out. And he's one of these guys with a story that has evidence to back that up, including a whole bunch of text messages. Now, when you read the text messages between the two, and his explanation, he says in the explanation that he was never sexually assaulted by Velveteen Dream. It was the conversations. It was the way he felt like he was being manipulated. And when you read the text messages, Dream wasn't saying anything explicit or requesting anything specific at all, but was talking to someone who was a minor. And there was a couple of things in there with the language that did make you see Josh's side of it. But from a legal perspective, I don't know if any crime was committed here in the case of Velveteen Dream. So this sucks. I mean, if he's guilty of anything here and he's really, you know, grooming these kids, or he's really manipulating them in order to, and using his fame in order to get something sexual out of them, then I never want to see Velveteen Dream again. But it's also disappointing as a wrestling fan because prior to this happening, and, you know, ignorance is bliss in our own minds, we think, you know, some of these people are stand-up great guys. We had the next 20 years to enjoy the in-ring work of Velveteen Dream, and now we might not have the next 20 days. And, like, from a wrestling perspective, you know, I think first and foremost goes the victims and the sympathy to them, you know, but wrestling also suffers as well when you take a person that clearly was going to be a pretty big star, provided they kept their nose clean and stayed healthy. There was no reason why this guy couldn't be wrestling for the next 20 years. And now, you know, depending on what comes out of these allegations, he might not be wrestling anymore at all. And that could be the case with a lot of guys. So it just sucks. It just sucks. It's shitty, and it's just a shitty situation. And all these stories literally make you want to vomit. The cars are still going crazy. I got dogs barking below me. What a mess in here. Trying to do this podcast while all-out madness is breaking out outside my house. Anyway, I think that was pretty much it on the WWE side of things. Like I said, I'm also not going to get into this big list of people. I've wrote down some notable names that I thought were worth discussing, but not every single name. That's stuff, like I said, that you guys can look up on your own and discuss. And once I get done here, we'll go through and answer and knock out all these super chats that are coming in. If there is any, I think there's a couple. But a couple of the other big names that were involved in this here, one of the biggest ones was Dave Lagana, who was had a prominent role in the NWA. I have even exchanged DMs with Dave a couple of times. I always thought he was a super nice guy. He just flat out resigned from the NWA, and the NWA is ceasing operations, or at least temporarily, and they released a whole statement on this. And Dave Lagana was accused by a independent wrestler by the name of Liz Savage, which, all seriousness aside, that's a pretty awesome ring name. For a fan like me anyway. But he just flat out resigned due to allegations from her. And again, her story is one that I encourage you to read because it's so gross. You know, this is she was under the impression that they were just friends and they shared a bed as just friends and nothing ever happened. And then something did happen. And again, there was no denial from Dave Lagana, just a straight up resignation. So, which, you know, to me just basically is just admittance that, yeah, this happened and I'm a piece of shit and I'm sorry and licking my wounds and I'm going to disappear for a while kind of thing. That's what his resignation told me. The NWA's statement that they released read, pursuant to allegations made by pro wrestler Liz Savage on her Twitter account on June 18th, 2020, NWA Vice President Dave Lagana has resigned his position effective immediately. As well, all production of NWA content is temporarily halted pending a restructuring of executive management positions. And to me, that's just such a huge disappointment because a lot of us had really high hopes for NWA when they first kind of came on the scene here and were showing and playing their shows on YouTube. I felt like it was a nice little breath of fresh air, a nice little safe pocket of wrestling that was pure and wholesome and kind of gave you that throwback feel to old studio wrestling back in the day. And it was just met with controversy right off the bat because even though they had all great intentions, the wrestling was there. You know, it seems like they had the funding and the backing behind them. And Billy Corgan is very passionate about all this. But then you had the bucket of fried chicken in Ethiopia comment by Jim Cornette, and he was gone. And now this thing with Dave Lagana is even worse. And on top of that, they had to halt production anyway due to, these cars. They had to halt production anyway due to the COVID. So it sucks. The NWA, I felt like in order to succeed was going to have to keep building momentum, and to see their momentum just slashed like that due to various just fucked up things that happened, some being their fault, some not, just sucks. So I'm hoping that by the end of the year, whenever life ever, if it ever returns to any sort of normalcy, that the NWA can pick things back up, put the right people in place, put the right people in charge, and, hopefully resume production and continue to do what they did because they were getting some success. They had a good amount of views and a lot of people were talking about them, and it was a nice little breath of fresh air away from all the crazy nonsense that we see in all the promotions now. And I think wrestling fans needed the NWA, and now we don't have it. So best of luck to the promotion and all of their future endeavors, pardon the pun. Another big name that was accused was Jimmy Havoc of All Elite Wrestling. Now, I have never, full disclosure, never really been a big Jimmy Havoc fan. I haven't liked him ever since I read that story about him and Excalibur. I used to think it was Luchasaurus. I think it was Excalibur getting into it at a party right in front of Tony Khan. And I think Jimmy Havoc kind of got his ass kicked a little bit in that, from what I remember. And he just seems like a fucking drunken hot mess. The couple of stories I read, and I just didn't really like him to begin with. Well, he has also been accused, and AEW released an entire statement on him. Now, they have not released him, but he's going to have to undergo treatment and counseling, according to them. So this is the statement. So we had NWA, WWE, and AEW all releasing statements on the situation. And with Jim as it relates to Jimmy Havoc, AEW says, we wish Jimmy Havoc all the best as he receives treatment and counseling in an effort to overcome the mental health and substance abuse challenges in his life. We are aware of various reports related to Jimmy. We are evaluating his status with our company and will address it when he was successfully completed his rehabilitation. They must have meant to say when he has, not when he was, because I copied and pasted this right from AEW. So when he has successfully completed his rehabilitation. So, again, this idea that mental health is a defense, I don't like it. You guys might have opinions on this, yes or no. I don't know, but I just do. I think that's fucking disgusting. To me, it just feels like it would give anybody an out to do something sleazy like this. Well, if I get in trouble, I'll just claim I got mental health or something because, and I just know there should be fucking zero tolerance for anything like that when it comes to any sort of sexual abuse at all. There is no excuse for it. Drunk, out of your mind, unable to tell right from wrong due to drugs and alcohol, doesn't matter. You did it. Pay the fucking price, asshole. So, I don't know. They're sending Jimmy Havoc to counseling, and then they're going to reevaluate him after the completion of the counseling. I understand that they're trying to be progressive, and, they are maybe operating under the rule of everyone makes mistakes, which I agree with. Everyone makes mistakes and they deserve second chances kind of thing. But I also think there's a short list of second chances you just shouldn't get. And if you're lucky enough to do something for a living that you love, like be a professional wrestler, and you're lucky enough to have and make money doing something that you love and not having to live a boring existence of day in, day out, same job, same life, same crap. You get to live a life of fun and doing what you love, and you get to make good money and all of that. And the only thing you got to do in order to maintain that is to not be a sleazy, disgusting pervert, to not be a drug addict, to not be a criminal, to not do any of that stuff. And they fucking can't do it. It just blows my mind. So I don't have any sympathy, for anybody that just can't keep their shit together and would be willing not only to do that to somebody, to a victim, but also risk, their entire career and the things that are at stake when you do something like that. I just don't get it. Do not get it at all. How much you want to bet the minute I go off the air with the podcast, these protesters are going to be gone? Oh my God. I'm all for the protesting, but I'm really, really super fucking annoyed right now by them. Anyway, let's talk about a couple of other names on this list as well. Another one was Justin Roberts, who I saw on the Jericho Cruise this year. Current ring announcer for AEW, a guy that we've all loved seeing in AEW because he's a great ring announcer. None of us understood why he was let go from WWE. The dude was great. He has a very successful book, a lot of great stories to tell. He's been the victim of bullying before in WWE by the likes of JBL and others. And up until 24 hours ago, Justin Roberts was an overwhelmingly liked individual. Not anymore. And that was another one with this story where you can read for yourself, but you can see text messages, and it goes back to that. Yeah, they could Photoshop that if they want, but do you really think that happened? What's more likely? What's more plausible here? Just Occam's razor that shit. What's the more, the simplest outcome is usually the right one, right? And, it's probably more likely that that's fucking true. And it sucks and it's gross, and I don't understand how people can be that fucking gross. Our friend Joey Ryan was also accused of a few very specific things. So we'll see how that affects his career on the independent level, because he never really came in and signed with any of the big companies. Joe Coffey was another pretty big name. And one of the maybe less serious ones, but also has a serious side and twist to it, Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette and his wife. Now, they're going to tie into another one that I'm almost throwing in here for fun. And by the way, Justin Roberts, Joey Ryan, and Joe Coffey, they're going to be the last names I mentioned. I've only mentioned a handful of names. I'd probably say there's a solid 30 more names that I could talk about if I wanted. But these were the notable ones and the ones that I felt like we'd at least discuss in the beginning of the podcast here. But Jim Cornette and his wife got tossed into this as well, being accused by someone in terms of using their power to get him to do something sexually. So basically, Cornette is into, and I'm not kink shaming anybody. This as long as it's victimless, I don't care what you do. As long as it's victimless, I do not care. Take a shit on each other's faces for all I care. Don't know why you would want to do that, but I understand that some people do. But with Cornette, he apparently, one of his things is to watch other guys be with his wife. And they've apparently done this before with, according to allegedly, with independent talent and people that have worked for them and stuff before. So this guy had all sorts of revealing personal messages. I think it was from Facebook, from Jim Cornette's wife, where they were talking very specific about a lot of this stuff. And, hey, if you want to push, you can do this or whatever, and that kind of thing. So, again, if it's just limited to Cornette and his wife and there's some information about their private life that was leaked or whatever, it's really none of our business. It's maybe more funny on the side than anything else, but certainly nothing that Cornette needs to be canceled for. He's done and said much worse on a weekly basis on his podcast than anything here that we discover about his private life and his private sexual life with his wife. So if that's, that in and of itself and limited to that is just fine. None of our business. But if it comes to the point where they're using their position to manipulate and get a third person into their bedroom, then that is kind of serious and kind of fucked up. And Cornette, of course, is on the defensive like crazy here. And he doesn't quite understand either, I don't think, how social media works, because a lot of the Facebook messages that were released and screenshotted, Cornette's current wife has her current picture on it. And so Cornette is saying, hey, when those, nice try, idiot, back when you claimed that these messages were sent, that wasn't even my wife's profile picture. And he's like, you dumbass, Facebook updates your profile picture, regardless of, when the messages were. If you scroll back and look at a message from 3 years ago, it's going to have your current Facebook profile picture on there. And Cornette didn't really seem to understand that and made himself look a little bit stupid here. So he says he's going to get a lawyer involved and all of this, but the guy does not give a shit. He is not backing down. He's like, I'm not lying, asshole. I'm not lying about this. Here's the proof right here. Go on the defensive all you want. I'm not lying. So I'm not scared of you kind of thing. And I'm not backing down. So, again, when it comes to using that as a way to manipulate somebody else, yeah, fuck you. But if you just have a kinky thing that you like to do behind closed doors with your wife, it's your business. Man, this is just, what are we into? About 45 minutes here into the live stream. And boy, these are wonderful, wonderful discussions. Oh, and speaking of streaming, good segue there. That's what I wanted to talk about next. I don't even know how this got outed, and I'm not even going to really talk about it. Well, maybe we'll see how this next sentence goes. But we all read the, I guess, information that had been leaked about Carmella and Corey Graves and a specific thing that they like to do that involves streaming. And I found that more funny than anything else because for some reason this was all lumped in with all of the information that we were getting. And when I read it, it kind of gave me a chuckle, but at the same time, I'm like, this is not a crime. And I clicked on it, read a couple of the comments, was laughing, and then I was really laughing at some of the people because you get these people all the time, these loud, innocent till proven guilty people. I'm like, yes, innocent till proven guilty. Yes, I get that, but sometimes they just scream it out for everything. So when the Carmella and Corey Graves stuff came out, I saw so many comments underneath the initial leak or story saying, how about proof? Got any proof of this? Proof? And I'm like, is what they are doing a crime? No. Is what they are doing our business in any way? No. So what the fuck are we talking about? Proof. First of all, you don't want proof. Because you know what would happen if you got proof? You get visual proof. You don't want that. I don't care how hot you think Carmella is. You don't want proof. And second of all, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is private between them. I don't know how or why this was leaked. I find it funny more than anything else. Neither one of them deserve to be ridiculed for it, or neither one of them deserve to be punished for it. Nothing like that. Like I said, if it's not a crime and it's victimless, do whatever you want. Shove a rock hammer up each other's asses. I don't care. Just don't take advantage of somebody else and don't abuse anybody else. That's not what's happening here. It's a funny story, but that's it. But I couldn't stop laughing and couldn't believe some of these comments. Where's the proof? Like, what's wrong with you? Shut the fuck up. Bunch of idiots. God. Anyway, that's that on the whole speaking out thing. That's all I'm going to mention, at least for right now. We may have to elaborate a little bit more on this on Monday night, depending on what comes out, because, today I didn't see a whole lot of new information. I read some more stories because there's just too many to read in one night. So I read some last night. I read a few more today. Some were almost surprisingly not as bad as I thought they would be, and some made me purely sick. So that's why I just encourage you guys to read for yourselves, because I think if I would have sat here on this podcast and read a dozen of these stories, I wouldn't have been able to get through it. It's just too gross to even fathom, and it pisses me off that wrestlers just can't be normal people. How hard is it to not be a desperate pervert? God, I just don't understand. Literally don't understand. I just so funny. I brought up Twitter earlier on because I just see it on Twitter. I just see some of the interactions and the way Twitter users talk to females on Twitter. I'm like, have you ever fucking seen a girl? Like, they should teach this in school, like how to not be an idiot classes. Like, teach it in grade 1st through 8th. Just to prepare these dudes when they get older. When they meet a girl that actually smiles at them, they don't automatically send them 6 dick pics. It's not the way the world works. Be an adult, be a normal, respectful person. You'll be amazed at the results. It's not hard. And that goes for women too. So don't jump on me in the chat here. Oh, but women can be bad too. Fuck off. It's not what this is about. We're talking about just the situation in general. Don't be a jerk off, male or female. Just be a respectful, nice person. None of that should be hard. Anyway, before we get into the lovely WWE COVID-19 news, and thankfully too, as we'll talk about earlier on today, Fightful Select reported some very improved conditions for the talent and a lot of the testing stuff with the COVID. But we'll get into all that here in a minute. Let me knock out a couple of more super chats if there were any that came in. I know there were a couple. Here they go. God, these protesters, man, they literally started the minute I went live. They showed up. They showed up. All right, where are we at next? Spaz, there's another one from you. Thanks again, man. That's your third of the day. NXT has hit a hard reset since In Your House. Come on over to my page for lots of that and more reviews. Thanks, Greg, and keep it up. Yes, Spaz reviews a lot of NXT stuff. They do seem to have kind of a little bit... I've seen that hard reset phrase used a lot, and I don't really think it's a hard reset. They're still the same. They haven't completely... they're about to reset, it feels like, if they're about to crown a double champion and stuff. And it looks like the identity of NXT is starting to change, but not yet. But yeah, they're getting there. And Joey G, there you are, man. Appreciate that. Thanks for the $5. I've been a huge fan of Cornette for years. The story hurts if it's true. I've been a huge fan of Cornette for years. I've always loved him, and I loved his old school mentality a lot. I loved his wrestling collection and everything he has to say about wrestling and just the never-ending waterfall of knowledge that guy is. But unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse when he just became such an obnoxious asshole about everything. I was bummed out. Cornette and I have extremely similar political beliefs too. He fucking can't stand, who our leader is. And, he has always cracked me up for the most part, but in recent years, he seems to be getting a lot more hardcore and a lot more angry to where he can just say the most offensive shit. This is the type of language I expect from a Trump supporter, not from, somebody else. Like, that's the type of shit that they say. And so I'm surprised he's on the opposite side of the political fence as them, because he seems like he gets along just fine. People that come out and say, well, people are snowflakes and Jim Cornette just speaks his mind, they're all people that probably disagree with him politically. But that's beside the point. Jim Cornette in the past couple of years, I think, has gone way over the top to where now even the very mention of a slight disagreement with him, he will just rip you apart, rip you to shreds, block you, tell you to fuck off, hope your mother dies. Everything, the most offensive shit you can possibly imagine, he just lashes out at everything. Truly an unhappy person that just lives with a constant state of just deep internal misery, because there's no way you can be that angry, that mad every fucking day of the week and be a happy individual. There's just not. And to me, it's always been hurtful and a shame for me, because I like Cornette. And all it's going to take is one tweet or one snitch tag of one thing of me saying, like, I don't even have to say Cornette's an asshole, I hate him, he's a piece of shit. All I have to say is, I'm disappointed that Cornette talks like this, and that's going to be enough for him to wish death upon my family. So when you're that extreme and you're that intense, it kind of makes me lose all respect for you and all of the great things about you and all the great wrestling knowledge that you have. And you're just a fountain of information and have great memories and with one of the best managers the business has ever seen. And if you ever want to learn something about wrestling, talk to Jim Cornette about it. All of that stuff that's great about him, to me, goes right down the toilet when you are so over the top and obnoxious and rude and cruel and crude and offensive in every way, shape, or form. It's not being a snowflake to not want somebody to be just a crazy hardcore douchebag. There's a difference between being too PC and not being a fucking asshole. I think people think that you can say anything to anybody, and if they get offended by it, oh, they're just a snowflake. No. Snowflakes, are everybody, by the way, because everybody even the people that use the word snowflake are a bigger snowflake than anybody else. Just look what's happening when people are taking down the Confederate flag. They're freaking the fuck out. Snowflakes. Snow fucking flakes. But anyway, Cornette, I've kind of just disowned him in my mind. Luckily I haven't yet been blocked by Cornette. I've never said anything derogatory about him on Twitter or anything like that. I usually just ignore him and I don't really mention him at all, because if anything else, it's more disappointing, and because I've always liked Cornette. I was always a Cornette mark, but that's severely changed in the past couple of years. And if this current story is true, like I said, the stuff with his wife, if he likes to watch other guys rail his wife, no problem. Like I said, victimless, and nobody's being abused. So have at it. It's not going to affect my opinion of Cornette one way or the other. If he likes to bring an entire basketball team into his bedroom to take care of his wife for him, if he likes to do that, that's fine. I support his decision to do that. But if he's using that as a way to manipulate or, maybe force somebody into performing some sort of an act, then underneath the jail with the rest of them you go, you asshole. Who is next? WWE Fan 22, thanks for the $5. I think some situations are different. Yes, they are when it comes to a lot of these stories, but let's not forget what happened to Enzo. Yeah, we talked about Enzo earlier on. So that's what we said earlier. Are every single one of these stories coming out 100% accurate? No, they're not. But I think many of them are. I think most of them are. And there might be a situation here or there where somebody is going to be an asshole and try to take advantage of the situation. Everybody's speaking out. I'm going to use this as a way to ruin somebody that I'm mad at. Some people might try that. I'm not saying they're not going to do that. But, a lot, like I said, when you read these stories, judge for yourself. Just use your own fucking brain. And you can, for the most part, probably gauge how this is going to go. Devlin, thanks, man. Appreciate the $5. I don't know who to believe at this point. Just don't agree with punishment before proven guilty, innocent until proven guilty. I don't either, but like innocent until proven guilty is the whole thing. Like, some things, aren't going to make it all the way to court. But, so when you say innocent and proven guilty, what do you mean? Proven guilty in the court of law, or just overwhelming evidence to where you don't need a fucking court? What's the deal? So that's why I said, judge each situation for yourself, because some is just a story. Some of it is just a story, but some of these stories a lot of people have been releasing these on their notepad on their phone. Some of them are 5 pages long, just extremely descriptive of every little minute detail. Some of those I might be more inclined to believe. Some of the other ones that might be worded with a little bit more malice or hate, maybe you can say, maybe put them on the side that maybe they're not being completely forthcoming here, completely honest. And then there's some that have like voicemails, text messages, DMs. I'm not saying that people can't Photoshop those, but why would they? Why would they when it can be easily proven or unproven if it does get to all the way to a court proceeding or whatever? So when it comes to some of them, that's why I just encourage everybody to use your own judgment. You can kind of tell, who's likely guilty and likely innocent here. And when the Enzo stuff happened, I remember at first, I'm like, sounds normal to me. Enzo's a fucking crazy lunatic, and he comes off as an asshole, and he's real cocky, and he's arrogant, and he's got an ego. So when the story came out about him, I was like, I didn't think Enzo was a rapist, but I could totally see him taking advantage of some young girl and, tricking her or whatever. And then when it came out that she turned out to be crazy and maybe this wasn't all that truthful, Enzo got the axe, and he seems to be really been bettering himself ever since then. Everything I've seen him do and say on social media has been positive. And, he was at Survivor Series. I was there a couple of years ago. He was in the crowd and he jumped out and got escorted out. That was all part of his, like, what is wrong with this guy? But as time went by, Enzo's kind of, bettered himself as well. And maybe it came out that, she was a little bit crazy. So there are going to be situations of that, but just judge the evidence. Like if you see a bunch of text messages, and you see a dick pic and you listen to a voicemail, what else do you need? What else do you need? Johnny Cochran up in here? So yes, innocent until proven guilty, but at the same time, don't be stupid. Chris Ludecki, thank you, dude, for the $5. I have a bad feeling a lot of these cases won't see court. You're right, because enough money will be thrown at the allegations. Yeah, and two, another thing about that as well, I shouldn't even be saying this because it sounds horrible to even say out loud. If you're a wrestler that's a sleazebag, if you're somebody that's done something fucked up and you know it, for your own career, this is probably the best time for it to come out, when it's going to get lost in the shuffle of everything else. Where if it's just a standalone incident out of nowhere on a slow news day, people are going to remember that shit forever. But, if you're just a medium-sized star, you're on the independents, you haven't made it to AEW or WWE or NXT yet, and not many people know who you are, and a story comes out about you now, maybe you can recover from this in 5 years and it won't even be fucking brought up again. So you just never know. Think about the Hulk Hogan stuff, even though that's completely a different situation than this, but a lot of people who've done fucked up things, have found their ways back into the company. In 1998, WWE brought a convicted rapist into their WrestleMania storyline in Mike Tyson. AEW is doing that right now. So, from a morals perspective, there's controversy everywhere. No matter whatever decision you make, it's always going to have another side to it. And it's a mess. And, how do you sort it out? How do you sort it out? And how do you start, organizing all this in your head and all this information to take in? It's just so much. So, that's why if you're one of these wrestlers, I suppose in a way, it's best just to get it out now when it's out with everybody else's. And it's really hard to focus on one story because there's so many stories. So if you're one of those sleaze bags, you better hope that whoever you victimized comes out with everybody else, because maybe, just maybe, you got a chance of surviving this, depending on how bad it is. And from personal experience too, like I work in the restaurant business. I've been all around friends and drunk people who hook up with each other and stuff. And, as an adult what's consensual and what's not. I've seen plenty of female friends that have gotten wasted and just hooked up with random people. But they were both wasted, and that's their decision. Maybe they wake up the next day regretting it or something, but there's really no abuse there. If you're just drunk and out of your mind. And a lot of these stories that were told by a lot of these victims involved a lot of alcohol. It involved a lot of, I wasn't in the right state of mind. A lot of these victims even said as much in their stories. He took advantage of my mental state. So a lot of this, started out well and then took a turn for the worse once alcohol and everything was introduced into the situation. So judge it for yourself, read the stories, and try to gauge from there whether or not you believe these victims. That's really all we can do. But it's really not my job to go out on here and really, claim innocence or guilt. I don't want to do that. And I certainly don't want to add to any more pain for the victims. And I don't want to wrongly accuse anybody. And I don't want to wrongly exonerate anybody either. Oh, they're back. Anyway, for those of you just tuning in, got a pretty decent audience right now. Oh, guys, by the way, you guys smash that thumbs up button for me. I would really appreciate it. For those of you just tuning in, the minute this podcast started 1 hour ago, massive protests started taking place outside my apartment, and they are loud as shit. So I'm trying to not let it distract me here. I'm hoping there's not too much feedback in the microphone. I don't think there will be, but it's loud. It's loud as hell out there. But anywho, who's next here on the chats that are super? I think that's it. Good. We can start moving on to more delightful news out of WWE. Man, I wonder if these protesters know people have podcasts. Should I go out there and tell them? Maybe I'll go out there and tell them. Anyway, let's move on to the shitstorm that was WWE's COVID-19 reaction. So, a lot of controversy surrounding WWE ever since this happened, all the way back to the WrestleMania days and potentially canceling the show. Vince McMahon and WWE being recommended to them multiple times that they halt productions. But WWE has had this idea in their head that the world needs WWE programming. Oh my God, I can't even talk with this. I wish I had one of those rubber bullet guns. I'm kidding. So all the way back at WrestleMania, they were having these problems, this controversy. Fans were really kind of grossed out by the fact that they just insisted on not only having shows, putting their talent at risk, and putting everybody that works in that company at risk for this disease, because the dumbasses in Florida allowed them to be deemed an essential service, which is just crazy. And that was kind of like an ongoing issue all the way up until WrestleMania, through WrestleMania, and then when the taping schedule resumed. Now, AEW did the same thing, but felt like they were taking a lot more precautions than WWE, having the few wrestlers that were out around ringside. They were wearing masks. There was testing going on. They were acknowledging that on TV and discussing the situation and trying to keep the fans up to date as to what they were doing, where WWE was just business as usual. And apparently this was very much influenced by Vince. He wants to continue things no matter what, regardless of how many times he's asked to shut down or it's recommended to him that he shuts down. He doesn't want to do it. And now they already had, like when this first started, they had the one positive test, right? The employee, and, they got rid of him, quarantined him, and whatever, and that was done. Then we had the events of April 15th, and everybody being released there, and WWE doing heavy downsizing and cost-cutting. And then they can continue to resume their taping schedule, but now a lot of stuff is taped. Raw, NXT, and SmackDown most of the time are being knocked out all on the same night, and they're trying to just continue honoring their TV contracts that they currently have while taking all of these risks at the same time. And the more recent string of reports that came out in the past week was all of the really almost like barbaric conditions at the Performance Center, with everything going on there. And one unnamed source described in a text message the situation being an embarrassment and being a total clown show with no leadership whatsoever. You've heard stories about the Performance Center talent that was used as the audience, not being allowed to sit down for hours at a time. It was hot. They had no air conditioning in these tents. The testing lines, because now they are officially doing testing since a second employee was diagnosed with COVID-19. They shut down production this week and they altered their taping schedule. I think they were supposed to tape Smackdown at a specific day. They didn't. They changed it and they altered a lot of things to get the testing done. And now they have implemented testing, but apparently that was a big clusterfuck and a shit show as well. And they didn't have testing prior to this. You know, even after that first test, they weren't testing anybody, and AEW was. How is AEW doing tests and WWE is not? That blows my mind that they weren't at least getting the testing and they were doing a little bit more than just taking people's temperature, because it really does feel like it is business as usual on WWE, aside from, of course, no fans being in the audience and stuff. So it's always bothered fans and rubbed many of us the wrong way that they're taking all these risks. And we've had big names, most notably Roman Reigns, that says, I'm not going to do this. And I admired the hell out of him for that, for saying no. And now another name that I just love that's also gone home is Kevin Owens. Apparently he also feels that unsafe working there. He informed WWE of his decision. They didn't give him a hard time about it. But it's probably not like that for everybody. You know, guys like Owens and Roman aren't going to go anywhere, and they're probably, for the most part, untouchable. But that might not be the same case for some of the underneath talent. And there was even, it's going around in a big lawsuit right now. We had some information coming out from a former WWE star that was released in April of this year detailing the events of the Saudi Arabia show last year, where they were essentially held like military hostage and weren't able to get home when they were in that whole scary situation that went down. So you got a lot of people coming out and saying the company that should be so well structured is anything but. It's such a mess. And these were disturbing reports that were coming out about how they were handling the testing and how unsafe everything was. And I'm glad that guys like Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns spoke up, because other guys wouldn't be able to do that. You know, and a lot of the talent, you know, WWE says if nobody wants to go to Saudi Arabia, they don't have to, but the talent's smart enough to know that they're going to be pressured into that anyway, and their careers will be affected if they choose not to go. And probably the same rings true for a lot of people that would go to WWE right now and say, look, I don't feel comfortable performing. I'd rather sit home until this all blows over, until it gets better, and then I'll come back to work. Not everybody is a Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns. So I was really happy to hear that Kevin Owens said, no, fuck this. And I was really happy to hear that Roman Reigns said the same thing. And I have personal feelings on this too, because I'm in the middle of things now. Like, I feel like I'm just really lucky where I live that my job was not heavily affected by COVID-19. I was out of work for 8 weeks because we had to close down. But when we reopened, we had the COVID-19 restrictions. We stayed open for to-go orders. And when we were able to reopen the restaurant at a limited capacity, we were slammed. We've been slammed ever since we've been allowed to reopen. People are dying to get out. They had cabin fever. And I work in a really ritzy, bougie area of Southern California with a lot of rich and famous people all live. And these rich assholes have just decided that coronavirus doesn't exist. COVID-19 does not exist. You know why? Because we're rich, and that's what we decided. And they come in, and they are all on top of each other. They're required to wear a mask to the restaurant, but not required to wear one when they're in it. So basically, when they sit down, they can take it off if they want. I have to wear one. The staff has to wear one, but the customers technically do not. And we still have to keep the tables distanced away, but they don't care, and they'll just start grabbing stuff and pulling tables together. I'm like, you can't do that. They want to have a 10 top of just everybody on top of each other. And to me, it's like the utter disregard for this disease, that they are just too rich to be inconvenienced by a pandemic. So they're just going to go about their business as usual. They don't give a shit. They're not even weird about anything. I can put my hands all over their plates and their food. I could sneeze on them and they would not care. They wouldn't even be worried. Where I think other parts of the country, people are really, upset. And if you do something like that, you could be fucking killed. But, where I work, these people are so in their own universe and so up their own asses that they just completely disregard this, and they're going to fucking get it. They're going to get it, and they're going to give it to me. Because like when if I'm trying to walk past somebody in the restaurant, they don't care. They're not trying to get out of your way. Like right now, if you go to a grocery store, if you pass people in the aisle, you try to give them some distance or whatever. Nobody does that. They're just right on time. I'm getting my hand shook by everybody all the time. I'm like, get off of me. So it's to the point now where, I feel like the same way a lot of WWE talent does. My job isn't going to be in jeopardy if I don't work, but I need to work, So, I got to be there and be as safe as I can, but it's really kind of disgusting. Even though we're following all the state guidelines, we're doing everything by the book. The customers are not, and they don't care. And I feel like them being irresponsible could potentially get me sick. And I just wish if I do get sick, I know exactly who gave it to me, because I will beat their ass. But I find it just fucked up that people almost get, how we talked about a few weeks ago, especially here in America, in this lovely educated place. Once we're bored with something, we decide it's over. And COVID is having some very alarming numbers right now. A lot of states are still reporting record number of new cases and deaths, and the numbers keep climbing and climbing, and we are not even close to out of the woods yet, but we're bored of it. Then we've moved on to other things, and at least in my little universe where I live here in Southern California, everybody wants to get back to their life and pretend this shit doesn't exist. And even I am guilty of that to a certain extent. I'm back to making regular trips to the store. I'm eating a lot of takeout food. Aside from putting a mask on and rubbing hand sanitizer on my hands, I'm living a pretty regular life too. I'm not holed up in my house like I was, for days at a time. If I have the day off, I'd probably get out and go do something, instead of just staying in here like I was. So, there's probably things that I can do better as well. But anytime you hear about anybody having to risk their health or their lives in all for something that's really not that important in the long run, that's when it's kind of frustrating. Vince McMahon really believes in his head that the world can't survive without WWE programming. That's how completely batshit insane this man is. That's how in his own world that he is. He really, truly believes in his heart that the world cannot function without WWE. Vince, I promise you, it can. It'll be just fine. The world will just keep on a-spinning with or without your goofy shit. So I kind of have like a personal opinion on this, because I feel like I have to deal with a lot of the same thing, and I have to deal with a lot of irresponsibility and people not taking the necessary precautions and potentially putting me at risk as a result. I find offensive. And props to Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns, and anybody else that says, WWE, go fuck yourself. I'll see you when this is over. And I hope and I wish more talent would do that. But in a nice turn of events, like I said earlier, Fightful Select released a report today noting that the talent conditions have improved. And here's what they wrote in their report. After a couple of tapings where the conditions weren't so wonderful, many who have attended recent tapings WWE have held spoke of improved situations, from air conditioning in the tents to chairs. All right, finally we get those chairs. In between segments, the talent has been having to stand for like 9 hours at a time, apparently, on the outside of the ring. Fightful has heard that more recent sets have been much easier to work. WWE has also brought in food trucks, added coolers for energy drinks, etc. And one of the catering shops actually told a person in attendance that if WWE didn't use them so often throughout this whole process, they would have had to furlough a lot of their employees. So, WWE's keeping some food service places in business, and that's good. That's all good to hear. I'm very pleased with that report. The WWE kind of seems like they have their act together, but what's frustrating about that report is if they were capable of doing this, why the fuck didn't they do it all along? What is wrong with this company? Man, it's just, they can do it. They can do it. They're so big and so rich and so powerful. They can do anything they want. So why don't they do it? I want to know the reason why testing wasn't being done. What's your excuse? AEW is doing it in Jacksonville. Why can't you do it in Orlando? Makes no sense. So now that they're finally doing that and everybody is getting tested, that's great. And I'm curious when some of these tests, if any of them have come out yet, I know they take a couple of days, like if anybody has it, any wrestlers have it, and if they do, what that's going to do to the taping schedule. Things are still very up in the air, and things are very fragile, because all it's going to take is for one or two wrestlers to get this, and they're going to have no choice but to shut down or quarantine something. So, they might want to do what AEW did a few weeks back and just mass tape as much as they can, because if they get hit with another shutdown here and the numbers continue to climb, because we've heard both reports. We've heard reports that you could have actual audience members, like friends and family of some of the wrestlers, start to occupy these arenas in just a matter of weeks. And then you've also heard reports that COVID cases are increasing. And there could be another set of shutdowns. And there could be another set of restaurant shutdowns for me when we get into the fall, or potentially even sooner than that, depending on what still is going on out there in the world. So, if they have any more positive tests, that's going to be a really bad deal for them. And AEW, if they have any positive tests, it's going to alter them. They got Fyter Fest coming up, which is going to be a 2-night event on 2 consecutive Dynamites in July. They want to make sure they get all that done and filmed, before anything bad happens. So, yeah, not good. Very disappointing reports there in terms of how WWE has handled this whole situation. But like I said, at least things are getting better now, and just keep doing that, WWE. You should have been doing that the whole time. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for the crap. I think we can start getting into some fun stuff now. I want to talk about NXT and AEW, and we want to talk a little bit about last night's Smackdown, and then I got to bolt on out of here. And I think we might be in luck. Car horns have stopped. I don't hear any more yelling and screaming. I might be able to get through the last 45 minutes of this podcast without being distracted. My God, the luck I have. Let me cruise back over here to the chat. All right, pretty good audience in here this week. Not quite as high as our normal numbers, but still pretty good. Like I said, if you're not subscribed, please do. We are right on the doorstep of 30,000. I think we are there now, but we'll be there officially probably Monday night. So thank you for that, and keep mashing that thumbs up button. Did I miss any super chats? I got one there I got to answer. Got another one from Devlin I need to answer. And hopefully I didn't miss anybody. Yeah, okay, and the last one I got was Chris. All right, let me cruise back down here to Devlin again, who is here. Thanks again for 5 more, my man. WWE is needed. I literally will not survive if they halt production. Devlin, you'll be all right. I promise. Just look to the Jericho Cruise. That's all you got to do. Jericho Cruise is 95% sold out already, even in the midst of this coronavirus. And I thought about going. I discussed it with the missus, and we probably are not going to go. It's just not responsible, and it's just too fishy with the COVID stuff. But the 4th Jericho Cruise I'm vowing to be at. So not this January, but the one again, I will revisit the Jericho Cruise. That's the plan. But this coming up year, WrestleMania, I got to go to Hawaii. I'm going to Santa Rosa in September, California. So I got all these trips planned. So Jericho Cruise is probably not going to be in the cards, just to be safe. And then hopefully a year and a half from now, we're out of the woods with the COVID. Maybe there's even a vaccine and it's safer, and I'll be jumping back on a cruise ship. But I know one of the news reports I did see, with a lot of these cases of coronavirus still continuing to increase, that some cruise carriers are halting production at least, or halting trips at least through September and stuff. So if those keep getting extended, it is plausible that the Jericho Cruise could be affected or in jeopardy. But if it is, I think they'll just postpone it, and Jericho ain't canceling nothing. That's not how he rolls. Anyway, let's get into the Wednesday Night Wars. I almost said Monday Night Wars. Let's get into the Wednesday Night Wars. I got to decide which one of these shows I want to start with. Let's go AEW. Yeah, let's go AEW. Then we can wrap it up with all WWE with NXT and SmackDown. I do think I have a winner in which show I liked better this week. The ratings were really close this week, which pretty much reflected the shows, because the shows were very close. I mean, it was hard for me to determine a winner, but I think I've got mine. NXT scored 746,000 viewers, and AEW had 772,000. So for the second straight week, it's a win for AEW, but a small win, like super slim margin there. They've had a couple of wins by well over 100,000, and then some not so much. So this one was pretty close. Show opened up on Dynamite with Kenny Omega and Hangman Page defending the tag team titles against the Natural Nightmares. Now, this is still surrounding the controversy with Dustin Rhodes and QT Marshall, and Allie, and Rhodes and Brandy are very anti-Allie, but QT is smitten with her, and she's probably using him. And that's going to lead to either a heel turn by him or something like that. So anyway, I wasn't expecting them to win the tag team titles here at all. There was going to be way too much tying into their dissension for them to be able to pull off a victory here and win the titles. Plus, Page and Omega have got another big match coming up on the horizon anyway. So Page and Omega won. They caught QT with the last call. But prior to that, Allie had come out on the ramp. She was specifically asked not to get involved. They didn't want her out there, at least Rhodes and Brandy didn't. She didn't come all the way out to the ring, but she came out to the ramp. That was enough to cause a distraction for QT, who I think went for like a marrow salt to impress her. He missed that, and that's when he got hit with the last call for the win. So Paige and Omega retain there, and clearly this will all implode at some point with Dustin and QT and Allie. And, kind of the language on commentary that's being used by Ross and Shivani is that he's smitten with her and that she's got him wrapped around her finger, but she, and that's probably what it's going to come down to, but I think he's going to wind up, I don't think she's like going to turn on him yet. I think he's going to turn on Rhodes to side with her, and then maybe she breaks his heart down the line or something, which is, kind of interesting because in Dustin Rhodes' personal life, he had a lot of these situations with Terry Runnels. He was very not smitten with her because they were married, but that relationship really helped cause a lot of that rift with him and Dusty at the time. So it's kind of funny that they're playing out a similar wrestling angle with Allie and QT Marshall. We'll see where that goes down the line, but I would assume it's going to lead to QT and Allie breaking away, and we're going to get some QT and Dustin matches down the line. So we had the return of Abaddon. I don't know. What do y'all make of her? We saw her on Dark a few months back, and I remember that and just like, wow, of like a fucking zombie gimmick. We've had some gimmicks close to this, sort of, but nothing this full-blown with this type of presentation. And she was taking on Anna Jay here, and Abaddon came out in her, crawling entrance, very like Demon Finn Balor-like, the way she would crawl to the ring, but she's got some pretty impressive like Hollywood-style zombie makeup on, and those contacts, and just yikes. I'm not a horror movie fan. I'm not afraid of things and monsters and shit like that, but she was really difficult to look at. Like, I was like, God damn. So she had the discolored eyes and the makeup all over her face and the blood and the red hair and the crawling and everything. Very kind of creepy and weird. She beat Anna Jay, of course. After the match, the Dark Order appear on the stage, and you've got Colt Cabana as one of the wrestlers that are at ringside. Evil Uno approaches him and hands him what looks to be a contract. We would find out later on that I think that's a contract for him to team up with Brody Lee as a tag team and get a tag team title shot or something like that. So the Dark Order continues to recruit and try to recruit Colt Cabana, which I feel like something will happen with him in the end, but he's not there yet. This was all happening, too, right after the women's match. So Anna Jay is still in there suffering the loss from the creepy-ass demon. And the Dark Order help her up. They help her up, and they bring her up to Brody Lee, and he shakes her hand, and it looks like they now have a female recruit in the Dark Order. I like that. And we'll see what happens with Colt Cabana in the future. One of my favorite matches of the night was MJF taking on Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn is 50 goddamn 6 years old. That's a 5 and a 6. He'll be 57 in November. He looks 32. This guy is a freak of nature. I just cannot believe how good Billy Gunn looks. It's freaky. It's disturbing. Anyway, pretty good match with MJF here. I'm glad that Billy put him over. I didn't want to see that go the other way. Wardlow is out there at ringside. Billy's son is out there. He gets decked a little bit. Wardlow winds up tossing that dynamite diamond or whatever it is into the ring to MJF as he's laying on the mat. Billy gets back in the ring, and I loved the way he pulled off this punch. Like, he had the diamond ring on his finger, and he was kind of waiting. He was laying down face down. And from a wrestler standpoint, I thought MJF did a really good job of sealing this and concealing this from Aubrey Edwards, who by this point is a seasoned referee. She's smart. She's not dumb. She's from the Earl Hebner School of Training. She should be able to figure shit out, and she should know when wrestlers are trying to pull some shit. But I felt like it wasn't like too hokey. Sometimes when the referee doesn't see something or has their back turned, it's like, come on, are you fucking blind? This was actually pretty well done. The way he just nailed Billy Gunn, hit him with a really good shot to the top of the head. He went down, and Aubrey kind of watches Billy fall. MJF's got his back to Aubrey, and he's able to stick the diamond in his tights, fall backwards on Billy Gunn, and kind of pin him like that with his arms out. I thought that was a great finish, and it was nice to see the wrestler actually try to hide something and hide it successfully from a referee who's not stupid. So way to go, MJF. Big win for him over the 56-year-old legend, Billy Gunn. How the hell is he that old? Another one of my favorite parts of the show is Britt Baker. Now, I mean this in a completely joking way, so do not take this seriously, but I don't want her to get better. I love her on this Rolls Royce, or this, is that what it's called, the Rolls Royce? I love her on that mobile. I love the promos that she's doing. She's fucking hilarious. The best part of the night for me, she had that, I don't know what it is. She was putting those little notes on that thing, that pulley thing, and she was zipping them over to commentary. That might have been one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And after that, she's doing an interview with Tony Schiavone. She puts Tony in a friendship timeout, which I laughed my ass about. And, she's just talking her shit, says shit in the promo to Tony Schiavone and, just being her normal, cocky, arrogant Britt Baker self, which I love. I love her much better doing this than I love her in the ring. And then she's demanding, I forget the name of her assistant that she's been treating like shit this whole time. She thinks that person is driving the golf cart thing. And so she's like, come on. She demands that they leave. Come on, let's go. And Big Swole is revealed behind the wheel, and she does the Undertaker Stephanie thing. And she goes, where to, doctor? Oh, that was great. Just like, where to, Stephanie? And she speeds off, and Britt is, I don't know how she didn't, I guess her wheelchair was locked, but that thing was moving pretty fast, and there was no, the bed of the truck there was open. I felt like Britt could have just flew right out of there. She was driving pretty fast with Britt screaming the whole time. That might have been the highlight of Wednesday for me. That was so good. I am loving me some Britt Baker. But yes, Britt, of course, we all wish you the best in your recovery. But as long as you're cutting a promo on TV in a wheelchair, I'm a happy guy. I kind of, in a way, felt like that with Brett when he got injured in 97 and he was on TV for 3 or 4 weeks in the wheelchair. Those are some of my favorite Brett promos of all time. Of all time. Him just sitting there pissed, just giving shit to everybody. That was great stuff. So, Britt Baker, nice job. Loving your work. She's amazing. Here's a fun match. Here's a really fun match. Cody defending once again for the third week in a row now, the TNT Championship. And this week, the open challenge was going to go out to anybody not currently contracted by AEW. So that's cool. A lot of speculation, could be anybody. We got a lot of names available out there. And before the match happens and we find out who Cody's opponent is, he cuts a promo. He cuts a promo with Arn Anderson and asks some very valid questions, ones that we ourselves have asked ourselves on this podcast. And that is, what is Cody's status with everybody else, like the Elite, like with Brandy, like with Dustin? And his alliance with Arn has been fishy to me, and I've been smelling a heel turn coming somewhere, whether it be Arn or whether it be both of them, I don't know. And now I'm starting to think like they could be just positioning and planting a few seeds here for Cody to eventually go heel. And I'm actually a fan. It's worked out pretty well the few times it's happened throughout history. I'm a fan of when guys turn heel while they're champions. Instead of turning heel to win a title or something like that, turn heel as you're the champion. That's cool. It hasn't been done very many times. You guys can probably let me know all the times that it has. The two most notable that I can think of were world champions, with Macho Man Randy Savage turning heel in the middle of his title run and CM Punk doing the same thing. Those are probably the two biggest names, but I'm sure there's more. But I think I like when that happens, and I think maybe Cody starting off his title reign as the TNT champion with these competitive babyface matches with a show of respect at the end, could take a turn to where he's now cheating and being a douchebag and rubbing that title in everybody's face. Might be a fun transition to watch. And since he's kind of curious about his status with all his friends, he's got to defend the title coming up here at Fyter Fest, I believe, against Jake Hager, right? And he was attacked by Hager last week, and nobody came out to help him. No Bucks, no Omega, no nobody, no Dustin, no Brandy, even his own wife. He doesn't even know where he stands with her, I guess. So they planted the seed there. Arn Anderson then takes the mic and introduces who Cody Rhodes' opponent is going to be, and it's Ricky Starks, former NWA television champion, now coming in to challenge for what essentially is AEW's television title. Very cool. Ricky Starks is very well liked. He had a fun run in NWA. He's very good. He's a good free agent to have. Got in the ring, had a really good match with Cody Rhodes, looked great in there. Took a crossroads at the end, got pinned and lost the match. Cody shook his hand. After the match on Twitter, Tony Khan said, I signed Ricky Starks tonight. So Ricky was brought in, impressed, signed to a deal right away. So congrats to him. Everybody was really happy to see him come out on Dynamite. And I think he'll do well there. Good outing for him at first, and now that's another big player or name that they can use on television now. So best of luck to Ricky in AEW. That's awesome. Another highlight of the night for me. After that, we had the Young Bucks taking on Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc. Now, we talked about Jimmy Havoc earlier on, and there has been a development with him. He's not going to be on AEW here for a while. They did get beat here by the Young Bucks, of course. Match went a little longer than I kind of expected it to. We also had a ton of interference at the end from Butcher and the Blade and FTR. And FTR is still, kind of building up their feud with the Young Bucks. And in the end, they kind of did a pair of spike pile drivers almost, in competition, similar to what Street Profits and Viking Raiders are doing on Raw. But let's hope we don't get any Young Bucks and FTR axe-throwing competitions in basketball games. As long as we don't get that, we get some good tag team wrestling, we should be fine. In the main event, we had Les Sex Gods taking on Les Best Friends. And this was great. My God. You had Matt Hardy on commentary, which was awesome. He'll be taking on Sammy Guevara, I believe, next week on Dynamite. That should be a fun match with all of the things that have transpired between those two. Also in this match, the Best Friends had put their number one contendership on the line for the tag team titles. So they've got a match coming up against Omega and Page, but that's out the window here if they lose to Les Sex Gods. And I would actually be fine with Guevara and Jericho being tag team champions. That would be fucking fun. Not forever. I mean, tag team scene is off the hook right now in AEW, so maybe you don't need to put it on an entertaining team like them, but just for a little while, I wouldn't mind them holding the titles. It might be like, when Edge held the title with Hogan all those years ago. Sammy can be playing the role of Edge. Might be fun, but the tag team scene is so good right now. Maybe there's not a place for that. I just think it would be entertaining because I love them as a team. In the end, though, the Best Friends retained their number one contendership. You had Trent pinning Sammy Guevara for the win there. And after the match, Jericho finds himself in the ring all alone. And the cameraman, who I believe is on the stage through the whole match, takes the camera down, reveals his hat and mask and everything to reveal that it's Orange Cassidy. Even the mask says AEW on it. Very cool. So he gets in the ring, steps in, kind of sneaks in behind Jericho. Jericho turns around and sees him and is basically like, shit. Even though Orange Cassidy is kind of, just kind of walks around slow and doesn't do anything, he's pissed. He's been attacked. He was attacked viciously by Jericho on Dynamite last week, so he's out to get his revenge, beats down Chris Jericho and attacks him. Jericho runs away, and it was officially announced, like we suspected, that we're actually going to get Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy at Fyter Fest, and that's great. And this is good for Orange Cassidy because I'm hoping what this will do for him is shed a lot of these ridiculous opinions that people have on him, that he's a joke of a wrestler. His gimmick is to do all this stuff, yes, but he can turn it on, and when he wants to wrestle, he can. He had a great outing with Pac. He's been very impressive in the ring when he wants to, and when he's pissed and is motivated, he can be a force, and he took down Jericho and whipped his ass. So Jericho's going to face Orange Cassidy now, and maybe that can help further people's opinions of him, even though once wrestling fans make their mind up about somebody, they're not going to change it, even when a 30-year veteran endorses him. They're still going, hey, it's bad for the business or whatever, so you're still going to have to deal with that shit. I think Orange Cassidy is great for the business, and I'm excited for this match with Jericho at Fyter Fest, and I'm glad that Jericho is working with guys like this. Orange Cassidy doesn't have to win. I'm not even expecting him to win, but just being in there with a name that big and getting that rub is good, and being able to show that you can wrestle. Like Orange Cassidy, he's good. Like, have you ever seen him wrestle? He knows how to wrestle. He's very athletic. Who the fuck can do a nip up with their hands in their pockets? Can you? No, you can't. He's good. I don't know why the hands in the pockets thing bothers people. Like I said, if he's wrestling an entire match and winning world titles and he never takes his hands out of his pockets, that's one thing, but that's not how he wrestles. You saw him throwing some bombs on Jericho. He was pissed. He's angry now, and when Orange Cassidy's angry, he transforms into a very intense, angry, good wrestler. So we'll see how all that goes down at Fyter Fest. I'm excited for the match, and would be even cooler if, like, Jericho put him over, if Orange Cassidy caught him with a quick roll-up, 1, 2, 3, and Jericho could be mad and pissed off, and he can leave pissed and maybe go do well, he's not going to do a Fozzy tour, because nobody's touring right now, but whatever Jericho's plans are, maybe he can disappear for a while and come back, I don't know, or he can just Judas effect Orange Cassidy and put him down, and that's that. Either way, I'm glad Orange Cassidy is getting the match, and hopefully this ridiculous, clearly wrong and misguided opinion people have on him, of him, will begin to be changed. So, like I said, AEW was a good show, but I'm going to pick NXT as the better show this week. Just by a hair. It wasn't much. The ratings were close, and there was a lot about AEW that I liked, but And I almost went with a tie, but I'm like, no, I've gone with a tie a couple of weeks. I don't feel like I needed to go with a tie this week. So just by a tiny margin, I liked NXT better this week. So let's talk about that. Show opened up with a tag team title match as well. Imperium defending against Breezango, who earned that opportunity last week. Imperium got the win here. Fabian Eichner pinned Fandango after a DDT, but there was a lot of interference involved there. You had Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch coming out. You had Malcolm Bivens, big guys, which I still don't know their names because I suck. I'm sorry about that. They were out there. After all that distraction, that's when Eichner was able to hit the DDT and get the pin there and retain the titles, which is fine. I wasn't expecting Breezango to win the titles there. We had Velveteen Dream. Talked about him earlier on as well. He was doing a satellite interview, sort of, with Tom Phillips. Velveteen Dream is sitting on a couch, and they're talking about his loss in your house and what's next for him. And that's when Dexter Lumis shows up. He kind of peers up behind Velveteen, behind the couch. Velveteen Dream doesn't even see him, and he places down like a cartoon or a picture of the two of them side by side as NXT champions, tag team champions. So Velveteen looks at that, and he wants nothing to do with it. He shuts Dexter Lumis down. He doesn't even know where Dexter is. Dexter just goes back behind the couch and disappears. So Velveteen's like, look, I helped you out. You helped me out. That's all it was one person, repaying the favor to another. I'm a solo act. It doesn't go any further than that, and I don't want anything to do with you, basically. So kind of shades of when Mankind was trying to get Steve Austin to get him to be his tag team partner. Remember, he wore the sign, "Pick Me, Steve." Kind of reminded me of that a little bit. So we'll see. There's a lot of things to take in here. We'll see where the story goes with Velveteen and Dexter. Does it lead to an alliance first, or does it lead straight to a feud? And is there going to be any ramifications on Velveteen Dream for some of the allegations that's come out on him, some of the newer allegations that's come out on him? So we'll see how WWE handles all of that going forward. We really don't know. Looks like Damian Priest is transitioning into babyface land as he defeated Killian Dane. Later on in the back, he got his tire slashed on his car, and then Cameron Grimes drives by like laughing in a very sinister way and peeling out and driving away. So Cameron, I guess, is behind the slashing of the tires of Damian Priest. After that, this was weird. We had Aaliyah taking on Xia Li. Now, Robert Stone is still a mess. He's still a disheveled mess after being let go or fired by Chelsea Green. He's now drinking. He's got his clothes all messed up. His glasses are crooked. He's fucking drunk at ringside. He tries to get up on the apron during this match, winds up vomiting in the ring, which allows Aaliyah to do a failed roll-up attempt on Xia Li. She gets her rolled up, but I think that was supposed to be the kick out, but maybe Xia instinctively kicked out. She was supposed to get pinned there, I should say, and she instinctively kicked out, and the referee had to go through the 3 count again. So it took 2 attempts to get the roll-up down, plus he had vomit in the ring. Very weird segment. I don't like the Robert Stone gimmick or character. This is a little bit entertaining, the way he's so out of his mind and just such a mess. It gave me a little bit of a chuckle, but still overall, I ain't liking it. But at least he's got one friend. He's got one friend in Aaliyah, so we'll see where their little mini faction goes. What'd you guys think of the Thatch S, Thatch Can segments with Timothy Thatcher teaching submission moves? Looks like he had some young rookie in there stretching the shit out of him. And I kind of like it because in a way it maybe reminds me of Chris Benoit in terms of like how he would be quieter and soft-spoken, wouldn't have to yell so much, but man, he could just break you in half if he wanted to. Back when Benoit was like in ECW, and he would talk in that very almost like Stone Cold type of way, that remorseless serial killer type of way, where he'd rub his hands together, I'm going to cripple you, and and he didn't have to be like crazy and loud and over the top, but he was very, very dangerous in the ring. I kind of got these vibes from Thatcher here, and I liked this whole thing, and it's only like session 1. Apparently we're going to have more sessions here of him teaching us various submission holds and shit like that, so I like the whole thing. I like Thatcher, and I just think he's a badass. I just hope WWE doesn't screw him up. Another great part of the show, and another highlight for me on Wednesday. Maybe not quite as good as the Britt Baker stuff, but very close. Undisputed Therapy. Poor Roderick Strong is freaking out because Dexter Lumis is all up inside his head. He is seeing things. He is hearing things. They want to take him to a psychiatrist, I guess, to try to get him right. So they take him to... It's so funny how they all go to the psychiatrist in their undisputed gear, which is lame as shit. So they go to the psychiatrist. Roderick's laying there on the couch, but the psychiatrist is the returning Kyle O'Reilly. Great to see him, all dressed up in a fucking wig and a beard. And he's talking to Roderick. I don't even think Roderick notices it's O'Reilly. I don't know if he thinks he's a real therapist or if Undisputed Era is setting it up to make him think he is. I don't know what the fucking point was here, but it was a silly segment in general. But basically, what they told him is that, or what the psychiatrist told him, is that he needs to face his fears and actually get in the trunk because he was locked in the trunk at the In Your House match, at the Backlot Brawl, right? So he's freaked out about that. So they say the only way you can overcome this fear is to face it. And it reminded me a lot of Jake Roberts in The Ultimate Warrior, because when The Ultimate Warrior was put in the casket on the funeral parlor, and I remember watching that, I would have been 14 or something like that, 15 years old, and it was freaky. They made it seem like Ultimate Warrior died, like he suffocated in the casket. It took him forever to pry it open, and when they did, he was like unconscious and shit. So, you know, it was crazy, that whole angle, and it fucked the Warrior up. And at the time, Jake Roberts was still a babyface. He was on the verge of going heel. And he's like, you know, I can help the Ultimate Warrior with the fears of The Undertaker. All he has to do is trust me. It's the first time we ever heard him say, trust me. And then he starts taking the Ultimate Warrior to all these different places. And one of them was back to the casket, where he wanted to lock the Warrior in the casket in order to face his fears. And this whole situation reminded me of that, although it had a much funnier conclusion with Roderick getting all the way up to the trunk. And then he's like, F that. And he just bolts, sprints, full speed, Usain Bolt style, right down the street. And they're all standing there like, what the hell? And he's run. They got they got a camera angle of him running away, and then a camera angle of him running towards the camera. And he's just booking it hard as he can. Oh my God. Funny shit. That cracked me up. I don't know why. Maybe I laughed harder at that than I was supposed to, but good stuff there. We then had an Adam Cole interview backstage, and he's being interviewed by the young lady there, and they've got the hourglass that Scarlett Bordeaux delivered to him last week, signifying that Karrion Kross is coming after him, kind of thing. And he's sitting there talking about it and not too concerned or whatever. Keith Lee is way in the background. He overhears Adam Cole talking. He comes up with his North American title and be like, look, dude, you don't have to worry about Karrion Kross because he's not going to be the one to take that title off of you. I'm going to be that guy. And then we get Adam Cole in the ring. So we get the Undisputed Therapy, then we get a backstage interview, then Cole goes to the ring. He's joined by Keith Lee, Johnny Gargano, Finn Balor, everybody wanting a crack at Cole's title. William Regal comes up on the Tron, and he announces that Keith Lee will defend his title next week against Johnny Gargano and Finn Balor in a triple threat match. And the winner of that match will face Adam Cole in a champion versus champion match on July 8th, which just happens to be, I believe, the second week of Fyter Fest. It's going to be the second night of that. So that's what they're going to do to go head-to-head with Fyter Fest, is to have that big champion versus champion match. And we talked about this all the way back on the In Your House review about Keith Lee. Now, this was before Karrion Kross made his, title aspirations known. And he's going to have a match coming up next week, as we'll talk about here in a minute, with Bronson. But I'm almost happy that they're doing it this way, because as much as I liked Karrion Kross saying, like, yeah, I'm here, I almost want them to wait just a tiny, tiny bit on him before they give him the full Brock Lesnar O2 treatment. And I mentioned in the In Your House review that I think Keith Lee should be the one to dethrone Adam Cole. To me, he's the strongest one on the roster. He's the most unbeatable man, and I would love more than anything for him to win the NXT title and be a double champion, and then he can just forfeit the North American title. You can put that up in a tournament, and you can give that to Johnny Gargano, who is a marvelous heel right now. He's great. So that's kind of what I had laid out. I'm like, that's what they should do. They should have Keith Lee beat Adam Cole, become a double champion. The North American title gets held up, passed on to Johnny Gargano, where that way Keith Lee doesn't have to lose it and take a loss. Then Keith Lee can run as a dominant champion for a few months, and then he runs in to Karrion Kross. And Kross beats him. Maybe Lee goes up to the main roster after that. I don't know. But then it's going to be the Karrion Kross show on Wednesday night. So that's kind of the way I wanted to see it go. But then last week, when we saw Scarlett come out there and deliver the hourglass, we're like, well, shit, maybe they're going to do Karrion and Cole now. But it looks like that won't be the case. They're gonna hold off on that. So we'll see. I'm assuming nothing funny is going to happen here. I'm assuming they're not going to pull anything shady with the match and do a schmaz or whatever, because they do want to have this match booked for July 8th. So next week, I'm hoping Keith Lee retains the title. I don't know if I want to see him drop the belt there, unless he drops it to like maybe Finn Balor. That would be fun. Like if Finn Balor pins Gargano, Lee can lose the title without actually losing. And then you got Balor and Cole, champion versus champion. That would be a great match. But in terms of like where I think they should go with the title and stuff, I'm rooting for Keith Lee. Right now, Keith Lee's my guy. I'm in no interest to see him lose at all right now for the next few months. He kind of got a roll-up pin loss last week against Gargano. I thought that was too much as it was. So I'm all aboard the Keith Lee train, and I want to continue to see him roll. So next week, I'm rooting for him. And I want him to beat. Not only do I want him to win this match, I want him to win the title. Because I said I don't think Adam Cole survives another opponent. I think this is it. I think Velveteen Dream was the last successful title defense he'll have. And it would be nice if we had fans in the audience. It would be nice if we didn't have to have empty arena matches, because Adam Cole has been champion for so long now. Imagine how awesome it would be when he finally dropped the belt at a takeover in front of 15,000 people. My God, that would be a moment. But that's not realistic. It's not. You can't really hold him off for that now. He's already been champion long enough. He's probably just going to have to drop the belt in this time period, which sucks for him, but it might be the way it has to be. And that's kind of what I'm hoping they do. So I'm hoping that it's Lee winning next week. Then he beats Cole. Somehow you put the North American title up in a tournament and give that to Gargano. And then after that, after a while, after Keith Lee wins a few title defenses and has a few matches for a few months, he runs into Karrion Kross and drops the belt. That's what I would do, but we'll see what they do. After that, we had Dakota Kai defeating Caden Cross. Lots of interference from Raquel Gonzalez and Casey Catanzaro. Quite the size difference between those two when they got into it on the outside of the ring. But not a big surprise there. Dakota is going to pick up that win. Bronson Reed defeated Leon Ruff. After that, he got on the mic and called out Karrion Kross. So he's challenging him to a match. I think they've already had a match. Challenging him next week. So we're going to get Bronson and Karrion Kross. That's going to be a big, easy win for Karrion, I have no doubt. After that, we had a Santos Escobar promo with his goons in the ring with him. He was detailing his reasons for changing his name and his appearance and all of that. Drake Maverick wound up showing up, gets in the ring. He's pissed. He's trying to fight off the guys, but the numbers game catches up with him. They beat him down, carry him all the way on the outside of the ring. They've got a little table set up there with a bunch of phony-looking computer monitors, and they put him through the table, or actually Santos does, with a phantom driver right through the table. Pretty gnarly spot for Santos. He landed right on his ass. Looked like it probably hurt him worse than it did Drake, but there you go. Looks like we'll be getting another match with Drake and Santos down the line. And in the main event, this was an advertised match with Sasha Banks and Bayley taking on Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. This was enjoyable. I enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed the exchange between Shotzi, or the exchanges, I should say, between Shotzi and Bayley, but also Shotzi and Sasha. Excuse me. They had some fun interactions in this match. I guess, I had noticed Shotzi, and I knew she was good, seeing her a little bit on the independents when she came in. I was happy she was there. Everybody liked her, but I haven't really been able to see totally what she can do until she's been in there with a couple of pros like Bayley and Sasha. The way she was working with Sasha, I want to see that match. Not just in terms of who has better hair color, but just the match itself. I mean, man, the wrestling those two girls can do in there, it was fun watching them get into it a little bit. It was like a fun, fresh, new match that I hadn't seen before, and I liked it. In the end, Sasha Banks taps out Shotzi Blackheart with the bank statement, but after a whole big sequence of events, Shotzi hits a beautiful-looking missile dropkick onto Sasha, but Sasha is able to, I think, roll her over into the bank statement, which is then countered into the cattle mutilation, which looked great, and it looked like Sasha had no way out there. Bayley winds up bringing a chair into the ring, which is enough to distract the official to get the chair and Tegan Nox out of there, and that allows Bayley to take Shotzi and just basically flip her over. She just picks her up by her legs and just flips her right over on her stomach, right into bank statement position. Banks locks it in for the second time, and Shotzi has no choice but to tap out. And the champions retain and do their thing. So that was good. I enjoyed the match, and I enjoyed the showcase there by Shotzi for her to get in there and mix it up with two pros like Bayley and Sasha. At the end of the match, when Bayley and Sasha are celebrating, they're both jumped by Io Shirai for some reason. I don't know why. She comes in and kicks both of their asses. She wasn't even saving the baby faces. They were just celebrating. She came in there and whooped up on them. So even though that was weird, I don't mind it because that will probably lead to a match between her and one of them in NXT, and I'm cool with that. You give me an Io Shirai and Sasha match, fuck yeah. Io Shirai and Bayley too. Why not? And I wouldn't mind them doing the deal where maybe they both get a title shot against her and they both lose. That would be a great way to build Io up. You know, if she's able to successfully defend her title against Sasha and Bayley at some point, I don't know if they're going to do that. You know, put the WWE Smackdown Women's Champion in a match and have her lose, but they might. You know, Bayley might say, I want to be Bayley Trace belts. Actually, that's what they're going to do. Now that I think about it, I just said that out loud. What do y'all think the chances of that are? You know, after Io made her attack at the end of that, now Bayley's going to be pissed and wants to be Bayley Trace belts. She's going to challenge Io, and then Io's going to beat her, and then maybe Sasha challenges after that, and Io beats her. I'd be totally into that, and I think both matches would be good and fun, and it would not be overdone with the main roster stars being there, because at least if you're tag team champions, you have a reason to be there, because that's been the rule. You know, instead of making something up like the brand-to-brand invitational, and we've heard a lot of the reports behind the scenes that Vince McMahon wants a bigger role in NXT. He wants to contribute more. That's not good, you know, and we can almost see the writing on the wall with NXT, like its days are probably numbered. It already feels like it got a little bit different with the move and switch to the USA Network and going to 2 hours, and some of their priorities changing, and some of that initial, you know, feeling and that vibe and that environment that NXT gave us. You know, WWE is going to ruin everything we love about it. So far, they're surviving, but if these Vince reports are true, we see more and more changes. You know, NXT might continue to get worse and worse. But in terms of this, you know, because I know when Charlotte comes over there, why the fuck is she there or whatever. But in terms of Bayley and Sasha, I have no issue with them being on the show a couple of Wednesdays and having a couple of matches. No big deal. Just don't bring everybody over there and just fucking AJ and Roman Reigns and everybody else. Don't put them all in NXT and I'm fine. We had a little bit of that last year with the build up to Survivor Series. I think Rollins appeared on the show and a few other guys. That's all cool. Just don't like overdo it. So we'll see where it goes. But I was happy with the NXT main event. And because of all those reasons, because of the main event, which I really enjoyed, I liked a lot of the Undisputed Era stuff, especially the therapy. And just overall, the show was more enjoyable to me just by a little bit. AEW was good too. You know, Britt Baker was great. Great to see Ricky Starks take on Cody. A couple of good tag team matches. And these shows were really close. And when I'm giving the win here to NXT, honestly, it's only by a little. So if you're one of those people who are like, what, good mic work? I picked AEW this week. Then you know what? I'm not going to argue with you because it's so subjective. And both shows were good. I'm not shitting on AEW in the slightest bit. And overall, I don't keep score. I have no idea how many weeks I've picked AEW over NXT, but I know AEW is in the lead by a little bit. But it's closer than what the ratings reflect, because they've won the majority of the weeks in the ratings, where WWE or NXT's only won a couple. But with me, NXT has won far more weeks, in my opinion, in terms of how enjoyable the show is. I am starting to run out of time, but I got just enough time to briefly discuss what we saw on SmackDown last night. Let me go in here, too, and knock out a couple of more super chats, because did I miss one earlier on? I think I did. Yeah, I got to knock out a couple of these before we get into SmackDown. WWE fan, I think I missed your UFC one. Sorry about that. Yeah, there's Devlin. Okay, yeah. So, WWE fan, I missed you earlier on. I apologize. You write in. Thank you, by the way, for $5. I think UFC is setting the standard for what wrestling companies should be doing if they want to safely operate. Yeah, I've seen a little bit about what they're doing, but I don't think Dana White doesn't seem like he's one of these, I want to comply with this shit. He's trying to buy his own damn island. So I'm not quite sure and familiar with the specifics of that and what Dana White is doing, but I know he's going to do Vegas shows and Abu Dhabi shows, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if WWE is going to be able to have the resources to do something like that. I don't know. But I'll have to look into a little bit more of what UFC is doing. I really don't know. I'm not a big Dana White fan. I think he's kind of a douchebag. So And I certainly don't ever want to hear his opinions on anything because he's such an asshole. So I'm not sure what he's doing, but I'll look into that for sure. Stone Cold, good to see you, man. Appreciate the $5 as well. Did you see Bret Hart on Backstage saying he regrets going to WCW, and if he had to do it again, he would have worked it out with Vince? I heard he was on Backstage. I didn't hear about that specifically. He echoes what I say. That's always been my feeling, is that he would have worked it out with Vince for a number of reasons. Number one, it wouldn't have ruined Bret Hart's career. Would have kept him in WWE. And WCW, they dropped the ball on him from day one. From the minute his big toe entered that company, he was fucked. So had he stayed in WWE, he could have been a Bruno type of guy. He could have wrestled for a few more years, cementing his legacy even that much deeper in the company. Great, brilliant send-off and retirement and Hall of Fame. It would have been glorious. And, a lot of the other details that would have gone along with him not going to WCW, and probably the biggest one would have been Owen Hart still being alive. And I think that's always the one that bothers me the most when I think about the screw job. Even though they're separate incidents, that screw job, there's no way you can convince me Owen would have died had the screw job not happened. He wouldn't have been the Blue Blazer. He wouldn't have been doing any of that had Bret not left and the Hart Foundation disbanded and them going in a completely different direction with Owen. That the Blue Blazer shit wouldn't have even been on their radar by the time they got to 1999 had Bret still been there. So that screw job was one of the worst days that led to a lot of horrible things, including the loss of life and the loss of careers. So, no, I didn't see his interview, but I'll take a look at it. I'm sure there's some clips online. Thank you, Michael Cuomo. Good to see you again, man. Appreciate $5 more. I think it's a generational thing with AEW being run by guys in their mid-30s, which is why AEW is handling this pandemic better. Yeah, you don't have an old, grouchy old man, in charge, and they want to... You're right about the generational thing. They're more, I guess they're just more aware and shit than, maybe some older folks are, I suppose, and definitely a different mentality in WWE. And I always appreciated like AEW's just honesty because they were coming out with that right away, because we criticized them too. I was surprised that, Jim Ross is on TV, and if I'm old, if I'm over 60, I'm not coming to work, and I wouldn't, if I was a company, I wouldn't ask that person to either. And a couple of the initial shows that they did where they had fans or wrestlers surrounding the ring, we were questioning, are they distancing enough? Is this safe? Should they be doing this? There's an order to not have more than 10 people in a gathering right now, and they're clearly breaking that. So they definitely have had some room for criticism, but how they've handled it overall and the honesty that they've had with the fans and them treating the fans like adults, which is something that the WWE does not do. They treat us like we're morons. They treat us like we're idiots and that we can't comprehend and understand the simplest of things. AEW doesn't do that. They're honest with you and they're open with you, and they tell us what they're doing, and they don't try to hide and bullshit anything, and they don't try to PR spin and lie their balls off about everything, which is what WWE does. WWE sometimes lies for the sake of lying. They sometimes lie when they don't have to. They just do it anyway, and it's mind-blowing, that fucking company. So, yeah, I think AEW, that probably has a lot to do with it, just, the people that are in charge and where they are in their lives. Thanks for 2 more. Devlin, Orange Cassidy's Superman punch looks insane. Yeah, he's good, man. I wouldn't want to take one of those punches from Orange Cassidy. He probably looks a hell of a lot better than Roman Reigns does. Hey, Dan Price, good to see you, man. Thank you for the email. Dan sent me another logo last night. I saw that this morning. Appreciate that. That one looks pretty awesome as well. Nikita, thank you very much for 5. Just finished with a night of heavy drinking. All right, and now chilling, listening to Good Mic Work and having a midnight snack. 2 a.m. in Holland. Always a pleasure. Well, greetings from Holland. Holy crap, 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, I'm glad you're home and you're home safe. And now you're online watching me. Hope you don't get the spins, bro. Good luck. All right, I think that knocks out the chats that are super. Let's jump into the down that is Smack. Last night's Smackdown, like I said, we talked about the Matt Riddle stuff earlier on. And prior to Smackdown airing last night, WWE had removed all mention of Matt Riddle's debut from WWE.com, and I think all their social media too, although I'm not 100% sure. And the show opened up with AJ Styles' championship party, his Intercontinental Championship party, where he was going to be crowned the champion. Renee Young is out there. The ring is surrounded by baby faces for some reason, so he's got all the faces out there. Tucker and I think Otis is out there, and the New Day, and Daniel Bryan, and everybody. AJ wants Daniel Bryan to put the title around his waist, which he does. Get down, buddy. Whoa. I had to knock my cat down. So Daniel Bryan complies and actually does that. And then as AJ and Bryan are still jaw-jacking with each other, and it's clear their issue is still not over, we're going to get another match there. That's when Matt Riddle comes out. Now, it was reported, I saw that earlier on in the day by Fightful, that Matt Riddle's debut was going to be a big deal. They were bringing him in with a lot of, fanfare. He was going to be involved in a big feud right off the bat. We just didn't quite know what that was. And here he confronts AJ Styles to open the show, and he says that you're the face that runs the place, but I'm the bro that runs the show, which was a pretty cool line. They go into a brawl. We go to commercial. We come back, and it's AJ Styles versus versus Matt Riddle, a match that I've wanted to see for quite some time. I've mentioned AJ Styles jumping over to NXT to take on Riddle before, and it's a match I've wanted them to do, but maybe it was something I expected them to build to or to be for a championship. Here, it's like an impromptu match, and his very first match on SmackDown comes against AJ Styles, and guess what? He beats him. Hits him with the Bro Derek, pins him 1-2-3, pins the Intercontinental Champion. It was a non-title match, but that's a big win for Riddle, and it was debated kind of a lot online if it was like the right call. I got no problem with this. There's no there's no rule on how you're supposed to bring somebody in, and plus, if you're wondering, was it a good idea to give Riddle a win over AJ, a star that big? Ellsworth beat this guy 3 times, okay, in a row, didn't he? And yeah, it was all by a fluke, but in a way, kind of this was too. AJ Styles seemed very preoccupied with Daniel Bryan on the outside of the ring. Shoved him once, got in his face. Even the announcers were like, what is his fucking problem? And, he's surrounded. The ring is still surrounded. All the wrestlers stayed out there for the match. It was almost like a lumberjack match, but it was all baby faces. So AJ was just, he had to have his head on a swivel. He was preoccupied with Daniel Bryan. He was so distracted, he was so distracted that Riddle was able to catch him in the Bro Derek for the win. And it's not even like it was a clean, clear, decisive win. It wasn't even that bad to me. So if it turns out to lead to a title program between the two, great, but I almost think that it won't. I almost feel like if I'm judging this, I feel like AJ Styles continues the Daniel Bryan stuff, because I think next week he's got to face Drew Gulak for the Intercontinental title, right? Isn't that a match? So he's putting the title on the line next week. He'll probably win that and then set up another match, maybe to Extreme Rules with Daniel Bryan. And maybe the Riddle match was just done and just used as a way to say, Riddle is here. He's not to be taken lightly. He can beat the best of the best. And that match was used to illustrate that. Some people were mad. Somebody wins the title and he loses the first week. This is WWE. Happens all the time. Happens a lot in the tag team ranks. We've had tag team champions that win the title and then go on like a 4-week losing streak where the titles were on the line, whether it's a singles match or a non-title match. They lose. I think the Revival did that famously, where they won the belts and then they never won again for like weeks at a time before they finally got a victory on TV. So I don't even think that was that much out of the ordinary. You should build them up slower and have them win a couple of guys. Yeah, you could do it that way if you want, but it doesn't make this wrong either. So not a big deal. I'm glad Riddle came out that big. I'm glad he got a win that big. And like I said, provided that, nothing too serious comes out of these allegations, I really want Riddle to succeed because I like Riddle. The Riddle stuff was very disappointing, but he seems like one of those situations that WWE is going to let blow over kind of thing. He's married. He's happily married. He might have done some couple of shady things here or there in his life. I don't know, but maybe it's not as bad as some of the other allegations that we've heard about in the past couple of days. And so that's why WWE made the decision to keep him on TV, because they seemed ready to pull the segment. They removed him, like we said in the beginning of the day, and then decided to just air what they had and didn't make any changes to that. So that tells me that what they know of the situation, which honestly is probably more than us, they're not too concerned about it. That's what that tells me. Not saying that's the truth or not. I'm just saying that's the message that's delivered to me. Because when I know WWE, we can say things about Vince. He doesn't care about anything except making the money or blah, blah, blah. When it comes to stuff like this, they do usually get rid of them or do punish. With Hulk Hogan, they didn't hesitate at all just to remove him from the Hall of Fame and get him out of there for a few years and stuff. So if you've done something, no matter how big you are, they will let you go. I just don't think they feel that's necessary with Riddle. That's just my opinion. That's just what I kind of gathered from the situation. But I'm sure, like a lot of these cases, we'll get more and more info as time goes by. Another big segment on SmackDown was Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman. The Firefly Funhouse was set to return last night for the first time in a few weeks. And of course, Funhouse Bray lost to Braun Strowman at the last pay-per-view. At Money in the Bank, right? Or no, the pay-per-view before that. Yeah, Money in the Bank. Backlash was the last pay-per-view. So Funhouse Bray is on the screen. Braun's in the ring. Braun's kind of sporting the mohawk now and the gold chain, looking more and more country every day. And Funhouse Bray comes up there, and, there's some flash cuts and everything. And then they cut to old school Bray Wyatt, who we haven't seen in forever. Well, actually, I think we briefly saw him in the Funhouse match with Cena at WrestleMania. But the original Bray Wyatt, the 2013 Bray Wyatt with the, Cape Fear shirt and the hat and the whole deal, is back, cutting his Bray Wyatt type of promo. Haven't heard that type of voice and that sound in a while. It was kind of nice to hear Bray Wyatt cut that old school promo. Now, it scared a lot of people. We were like, does this mean he's back? Is the Fiend no more? Is the Fiend done? And he's back to being old school Bray Wyatt? Or is this a third member of his personality? Because I think Matt Hardy has 3, right? So now Bray Wyatt might have a third guy. And with old school Bray Wyatt now making an appearance, you have to wonder if that Bray Wyatt will also get in the ring at some point. And I think it was Spaz who mentioned earlier on, do you think they could take all 3 of these characters and put them in individual feuds with different people? That would be really interesting if they did that. Because what if they all went undefeated and then one of them wins the title? Will the other one become the number 1 contender to that title? Will Funhouse Bray become the number 1 contender to Fiend Bray? I don't know how any of that stuff works, but it's interesting, and I think it's probably a good idea because the Fiend character, you can say this about everything. I feel like everything would be better with an audience, but the Fiend character I think really would be better if it had an audience. So in order to not overexpose that and make that stale, add another side of Bray Wyatt, bringing back an old personality, and you can have that Bray Wyatt have a match. And maybe it's a series of 3 that leads up to the Fiend taking the title from Braun Strowman. Because we've got Extreme Rules now on the horizon, and you had Strowman defeating Funhouse Bray. Maybe at the next pay-per-view, it's old school Bray Wyatt versus Braun Strowman. And Braun Strowman beats that Bray Wyatt. Then at SummerSlam, you do Strowman Fiend. And we don't see the Fiend again until SummerSlam. And that's where he wins it back. Maybe we'll be a little bit closer by that point to having an idea when or if fans can return to the arena. And if you put the belt on Bray or on the Fiend at SummerSlam, you've got time then to get Roman back into the mix by the end of the year if you think that's something that can be worked out. So maybe long-term, you can't plan anything long-term right now because everything's so fluid and changing all the time. But maybe that's one of the ideas they have in their head. A trilogy of matches with Bray Wyatt that results in the Fiend winning the title, capturing the Universal title, running with it for a few months until they get their man Roman back. And at that point, they can do one of 2 things. Either put him back in the title hunt right away and give him the match with the Fiend that he was probably going to get before he left, or they can hold him off again all the way until next WrestleMania. And when Roman was scheduled to beat Goldberg this year for the title, maybe he'll win next year. But if everything goes back to normal, if the fans are allowed back in the arenas, and if next year's WrestleMania is unaffected by any COVID-19 situation at all, and it happens here in LA, I want to see Roman Reigns versus The Rock. That's what I want to see. But if that's out the window, they might hold Roman Reigns off until next year to win the title back. I don't know, but maybe that's what they're doing here. Strowman will beat the first 2 Brays, and then he'll lose to the Fiend. And I'd honestly be fine with that because I don't really like Strowman. So I'd rather see Bray Wyatt be the champion. Sonya Deville, just want to mention her again and shout her out because she continues to impress on the mic. Really good segment on Miz TV with Mandy Rose. And I really like the contrast between the two because Mandy is dressed out there and, her cute little outfit and her things are out and her makeup's done and everything's going on there. Sonya is just wearing a straight black suit, nothing revealing, not one piece of skin, not 1 inch of skin is exposed aside from her face and her hands. And she talks about the differences between Mandy and her. She goes, look at you and look at me. I'm so much better than you and I'm superior to you in every single way, but yet you get more opportunities than me. You want to know why? Because of this. Basically talks about her blonde hair and her big boobs and her big ass and all that shit. And I like that because Sonya is right in a way. Mandy, I'm sure, is a very nice person and everything. But And we certainly aren't in the times of back in the day of, wrestling just being about divas and lingerie pillow fights and hot chicks and bikini contests and stuff like that. But there still is a very clear issue that is there with people with better looks getting more opportunities. That's something that goes on in society all the time, just in general, in every job and stuff. So they're bringing that in, but also Sonya, is being so intense on the mic, and she probably truly believes a lot of these things too. And every time that she's gotten on the mic and she's really cut a hard promo on Mandy Rose, it's been good. It's been real good. So that whole segment was really good. I really like Sonya Deville. She continues to impress me. I just hope she continues to impress WWE, and they like her as much as we do, because this is the first time I've really felt anything for Sonya. I knew she had the fighting background, and I liked her for the most part when she first came in and they were doing not the Riot Squad. What was she a part of? Fire and Desire or whatever. And there was a third one, right? Wasn't she Paige's group? I forgot how she even came in. Doesn't matter. Back then, she was like, okay, yeah, she's good. She can punch and kick and everything. But, what else does she have if they really want to make her a big part of the women's roster and a force to be reckoned with and a Ronda Rousey type? You need to build her up, her character up a little bit. And I think they've been doing that. And I hope that they just don't rock the boat and they don't drop the ball on this. And eventually we're going to get another match, I'm sure, between Sonya and Mandy. And I don't know if that's when Mandy will finally get her revenge or if Sonya will put her down for good and maybe go on to be a title contender. I would really like to see that from Sonya Deville. The only other thing I have written down for SmackDown is the Jeff Hardy interview backstage, owning up to his demons. Apparently, Sheamus has got a big toast planned for next week to Jeff Hardy, so it's going to be more tapping into the alcoholism and all that stuff. And Sheamus had defeated Jeff Hardy at Backlash in a match that I was pleasantly surprised with. I predicted it wrong. I thought for sure that Jeff Hardy would just get the win and move on to something else, but they went in the other direction and had Sheamus beat him pretty much clean, and I like that because that was a little bit more realistic to me. When somebody's battling their demons, it can't be all feel good. It can't be just an all feel good story where it's going to be a quick rise to the top and it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows and all that shit. No, you're going to go through some hills and valleys and obstacles along the way, and not everything is going to work out. And so when Jeff Hardy got hit with a dose of reality at SmackDown, at Backlash, I like that because that was way more realistic than what we thought they were going to do. But in the end here, it does look like Jeff will get his revenge. They're going to do the toast next week. Something's going to happen there. Let's hope that no more piss gets thrown into anybody's face. But I would assume that will set up your stip match at Extreme Rules with Hardy going over there and that being the end of that. So I kind of was hoping, actually, that Hardy and Sheamus's issue would be over at Backlash, that would be it. Because Sheamus beat him. Be done. You know what, Jeff? That's just one obstacle you didn't get over. Move on to the next one. But it still does look like he will get his redemption in the end, and I fully expect whatever stipulation match they have. Let's hope it's not something weird like an alcoholics match or a beer on a pole match or anything like that. Let's really hope that doesn't happen. But it's going to be an Extreme Rules match, and there's going to be a stipulation attached to it, and Jeff Hardy's going to get the win this time. He's not going to go down a second time. So that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about for SmackDown. I didn't watch the show last night because in light of everything that I was reading for the past, 24 hours online, I wasn't in a wrestling mood. And I worked during the day yesterday and got home right when SmackDown came on the air, and I just couldn't watch it. I just wasn't in the mood to sit there and watch it. So I kind of caught the YouTube clips today. I read an entire transcript of the results and watched a couple of things that I wanted to watch, and that was it. I just wasn't in a wrestling fan mood last night. It just didn't feel appropriate, and it was really tough to even be motivated to watch SmackDown. So, especially with everything going on. So, we will see. I somehow managed to get this podcast done in time, but I do need to bolt out of here. Let me cruise back over here to the chat and see if there's anything else I need to answer. We're good. Yeah, Dan Price, you missed the Dynamite review. That was a while back. I talked about that first in my results. I knocked them out and then finished up with NXT and SmackDown. But for the first hour was the speaking out stuff, and then we got into the COVID stuff with WWE. Then we got into the results, which began with AEW. And I liked AEW. I think I picked NXT as the better show this week, but just by a hair. AEW had some great stuff with the Britt Baker shit and the Orange Cassidy stuff. All sorts of good stuff. And the MJF Billy Gunn match I really liked. Ricky Starks making an appearance, challenging for a title, and getting signed to a contract after the show. Lots of good stuff on Dynamite this week. But I think they weren't like the greatest shows ever. I thought they were both like solid B- to B+ shows, but NXT just giving me a little bit more. I loved the Undisputed Therapy. I loved a lot of what they did. It was fun shit on Wednesday. So we'll see. There's so much going on right now, and there's so many like unanswered questions with everything changing. We don't know what's going to happen next week with TV, not only with the COVID stuff, but if more and more names come out, or if more and more action is taken from a disciplinary standpoint on a lot of these wrestlers from any of these companies. I don't know how that'll affect the futures of a Velveteen Dream or a Matt Riddle or anybody else who's been named in these accusations. If it'll have any effect on the TV next week, we'll have to wait and see. Also on Monday night, we'll elaborate on anything else that may have happened. By the way, I didn't mention anything about Raw this week with the Christian Randy Orton stuff and all of that. You can catch my Raw review from Monday. It's on my channel right now. But they did advertise a match for Monday night, Charlotte versus Asuka. Yeah, WWE, way to go. That won't make Twitter annoying at all. Not at all. So I'm sure people are just thrilled with that match announcement on Monday night. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about there on Monday, but we might have more to elaborate on in terms of the entire Speaking Out movement and everything that's been going on since it started. So yeah, that was a lot to digest. I apologize for a couple of things in this episode. I was really distracted in the first hour and 15 minutes because we had a huge Black Lives Matter protest go right by my apartment the minute I started going live, and I'm very much in support of those protests. They were all peaceful, nothing was going on, but there was a lot of loud yelling and horn honking, and it really fucked up my flow in the first hour of this podcast here, so I apologize if I was stumbling. I know when I read one of the statements, I couldn't even read the word because all I could hear was honking horns. So I apologize for the choppy clunkiness of this, but I still will release this audio up on the podcast site. It's been 2 weeks since I've thrown anything up on Stitcher and Spotify and all that stuff. So keep a lookout for that later on tonight. When I get home from work, I'll throw the audio up there if you want to download the MP3. And I think that's it. I got nothing else to say to you guys. So I hope you guys have a great 48 hours. I will catch you in 2 days, immediately following Monday Night Raw. I'm going to watch the show, try my best to enjoy it. We'll come up here and have a fun live stream. I won't have to go to work, so I'll crack open a frosty beer, and hopefully we can hang out and talk about much more positive things than negative. That's the goal for Monday. Knock on wood. So you guys take care. Have a great night and good rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.